Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Planning Committee of Monday, the 20th of February. It's going to be a long one, I imagine, and again, it will be one of those that I think there will be a lot of opinions that are very strong. As always, make points that are new, be nice to each other, and if you are waiting in the audience, I do realise you don't always agree with everything we say, but please don't shout out because then I have to clear the room, and I really don't want to do that because it's much better you're in here listening to it all. So, moving forward, we don't have any apologies because every single member of the committee is in front of me. Hello, everyone. Declarations of interest, same as always, let us know before any items. You have to leave the room for any sort of interest. There will be no exclusion of the press. And tonight we don't have any minutes because the last meeting was only a week and a half ago and Paul Howard hasn't quite written them all yet. So we'll get those at the next committee meeting. So the first item on the agenda is planning application number 211564 at former police station and magistrates court, Hertfordshire Road. And I assume this is Matthew, or is it Ian?
It's me, John.
Sorry, I remember now, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Moore. We'll come and get you when we're done. You might want to find a comfy seat for a while, though.
Or go into reception.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This is an application for the redevelopment of the former police station and magistrates court site on Hertfordshire Road. The applicant is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon, Cornwall and PBSA Hertfordshire Road, SARL. The proposal is an outline planning application with all matters considered in detail except landscaping, and the demolition of all the existing buildings, and construction of mixed-use development comprising purpose-built student accommodation and a co-living building. This, as a reminder, is the site outlined in red, and as members will recall, the application came to Planning Committee in September last year, where it was deferred. It was then considered at the Planning Committee on the 10th of October, where it was deferred again in order to allow the developers to revise the scheme, taking into account a number of issues that had been raised by members that are best seen in Appendix 2 of the committee report. So I'm just going to not go through the entire application again. Obviously, it was presented in detail in September last year. I'm just going to spin you through the changes that have taken place to the design of the scheme since it was deferred. It was taken to the Exeter Design Quality Partnership Design Review Panel in November last year, which has influenced the design that was resubmitted at the beginning of this year in January. So these bullets are a summary of the key changes. So the number of rooms in the PBSA building has reduced from 677 to 640. The co-living building has been reduced from 358 to 315. The sixth floor of the co-living building has been removed, and part of the fifth floor of the PBSA building to the west has also been removed. Floor-to-ceiling heights in both buildings have been reduced on each floor to reduce the overall height of each building. Both buildings have been set back further away from Hertfordshire Road than previously. So privacy film has been applied to the windows of the co-living block facing towards Higher Summerlands. The central wing of the PBSA building has been removed to create one large courtyard instead of two. The co-living courtyard has been elevated from the lower ground level to ground floor, improving daylight. And the amount of external landscape space has increased on the site overall from 5,600 square metres to 7,200 square metres. In the co-living block, the amount of communal amenity space has been increased to 5 square metres per room, whereas previously it was 2.5 square metres per room. By setting the buildings further back from Hertfordshire Road, this has allowed for some of the existing trees along Hertfordshire Road to be retained, and these comprise a 11-metre silver birch, 7.5 metre hawthorn, 50 metre silver birch, 60 metre beech, and another 40 metre high silver birch. So this diagram, taken from the developer's addendum design and access statement, indicates where those changes have taken place. So this is where the co-living building has been reduced by 1 storey, and this is where the PBSA block has been reduced by a storey at its western end. The central wing within the PBSA block has been removed to create this larger courtyard area. As I said, overall both buildings have been reduced, presenting a lower building on the corner between Herefordshire Road and Gladstone Road. Both buildings have been pulled further back from Herefordshire Road, creating a wider area to allow for a greater amount of green landscaping along the frontage of Herefordshire Road, including some of the existing trees. And the PBSA building has also been stepped back along its frontage as well to create a modulation in the building frontage to help break up the massing. So looking at the changes for the floors where the key changes have taken place, so within the co-living block, this is the lower ground floor. The previous proposal is on the left, the current proposal on the right. As can be seen, the key changes that have been carried out here are the increase in size of the co-living area, taking up basically where the previous courtyard used to be. At the same time, one of the comments of the design review panel was accessibility to the cycle store. So the cycle store is no longer situated on the lower ground floor and has been situated on the one of the upper floors. This is the ground floor of the co-living building. So as you can see, the red line boundary indicates at the bottom of the screen. As you can see on the right, the building has been pulled back further away from Herefordshire Road in accordance with members' comments previously. And this is where the external courtyard area has been elevated to the ground floor, with access from the communal area here and with further access off the internal corridor over here. This is the first floor of the co-living building. Key change to highlight here is that this is where the cycle store has been relocated to provide direct access at the street level behind the building. And then if we skip up to the third floor, the developers have added more communal amenity space here with windows facing towards the internal courtyard. That's to increase the amount of communal amenity space overall in the building. And the last significant change for the co-living building is that this floor, the 6th floor, has been removed entirely. And over looking at the PBSA building, so the lower ground floor on the left, the current proposal on the right. So as can be seen, the central wing has been removed. This previously split the courtyard in two, so you had 2 courtyard areas. So now you have a much larger single courtyard, allowing for greater light to penetrate that area. Again, the cycle store, which had been positioned on the lower ground floor, has been moved up in the building to improve access to it. And this area here has been added as additional communal amenity area. We go up a floor to the ground floor. Key thing to highlight here, as can be seen, the building has been pulled back from Herefordshire Road here compared to this building here, and this is where the cycle store has been relocated to. So you've got one small cycle store here and a large store here, with both with direct access to the rear of the building at street level. The other key change in this building is the amendments to the 5th floor So as can be seen, this is where at the western end of the building, this floor has been removed entirely compared to the previous design, which creates the stepping down effect as you're moving along Herefordshire Road following the topography. This slide shows the Gladstone Road elevations. The previous proposal that members considered in September is at the top, and the current proposal is at the bottom. So, as I mentioned, the floor to ceiling heights on each floor has been reduced compared to previously. So the number of stories here is the same. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 stories. But by reducing the floor to ceiling heights in the building, the overall height has decreased. And as can be seen, the building has been redesigned to effectively put the top 2 stories within the roof space. So you have a 4-story aspect up to the eaves of the building, and then the gables to copy the character of the St Luke's campus buildings, which gives a sense of reducing the verticality of the building, particularly at this key corner, which is one of the concerns of members previously. And then this slide shows the elevation facing Herefordshire Road. So again, the previous proposal at the top, the current proposal at the bottom. So the key thing to point out here is by removing the top story of the PBSA building, it's created this stepping down effect as you're coming down the slope of Herefordshire Road. This decreases the massing of the building, particularly in this area compared to previously. Again, the top 2 stories have been added into the roofscape, so this decreases the sense of verticality for this part of the building here, and also on the key corner at Herefordshire Road and Gladstone Road. Top story of the co-living building, which is effectively this grey area, has been removed. Other than that, the number of stories remains the same, but again, by reducing the floor to ceiling heights, the overall height has reduced compared to previously, which I think can be seen in this image. So effectively looking at the same issue, but looking at the illustrative images. So we've got the previous proposal on the left and the current proposal on the right, and my opinion of this is to be clearly seen by redesigning this corner. The vertical emphasis that was designed specifically here to make a key focal point on this corner has been reduced. So that, combined with the drop in height overall, creates a much lower scale building. And then this is the illustrative image viewed from the St Luke's campus. And here you've got plenty of space in front of the building to allow for larger buildings on this site. So this image has been taken from the developer's addendum design and access statement, which is just indicating in diagrammatic form how the scale and massing of the building has been reduced. Likewise, this one slightly further down Herefordshire Road, where the stepping down has taken place, which has reduced the massing and scale of the building quite dramatically at this end of the PBSA building. And then this is the view looking back up the road. And in this slide, you get the sense of the reduction in scale and massing here, and also the wider landscaped area along the Herefordshire Road frontage. So members will know from reading the report, both now and previously, that this is an outline application, so all details are to be considered except landscaping. But having said that, the developers have submitted quite a lot of information and detail around the proposed planting strategy. And this is the slide I've chosen from their addendum design access statement to summarise that most clearly. So this slide is obviously showing the wider frontage with the scope to retain the trees in front of the buildings. The existing trees would need to be removed to the west, but replacement tree planting is proposed here. And likewise, there are various places around the site, around the edge, and through the green corridor in the centre where further tree planting would take place. So this is the final slide. So our conclusions, members, as officers, are the same as before. So this is a high quality design. We do consider that the redesign has responded very well to the issues that were raised by members previously. It optimises a brownfield site in a very sustainable location and delivers substantial economic, social, and environmental benefits to the city, provides much needed student and young persons accommodation, including affordable housing, which contributes towards meeting our 5-year land supply current shortfall. And our view is that the buildings are very well designed. They have been designed by a top national architectural practice. And those points are what we made previously. So you'll note from the update sheet that the number of units in each building has been amended. And therefore our recommendation is approval subject to Section 106 agreement and the conditions as shown on the update sheet, which you should all have. So thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Does anybody have any questions? So I've got Martin and then Anne and then Rob to begin with, okay?
Hi, it's just a matter of clarification really. I was surprised to see a future bus lane zone marked on the presentation that was over the weekend. I don't recall seeing that before. It would substantially reduce the setback achieved from Exeter Road to the buildings. I wonder if you could just comment on that. I don't believe we were advised of that before. Could you just tell me what exactly is going on there, please?
Yeah, sure. I think it did come up previously at the previous committee meetings, but so this application was submitted in 2021, and there was a lot of discussion with the developers before that. And initially, there was a discussion about providing a bus lane along Herefordshire Road, which so we have Devon County Council's highways officer for Exeter here this evening, so can explain that. But as the scheme evolved, effectively that element dropped away because it was considered not necessary anymore. And I think the fact that it's still shown on the images is just indicating that should it come back at some point in the future, there is scope to provide that. So there is that future proofing element to the design that would allow it. But as far as the highway officer tells me otherwise, that's not proposed at the current time.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. The land has been secured in case there's any future funding that may come forward to enable a bus lane to be put in at that location. There isn't a requirement for it at the moment, but certainly if external funding was to come forward, it would give the opportunity for us to ensure that there's a bus lane secured in that location.
Oh, thank you. I was happy to see the reductions that have been achieved and the setting back. Okay. I'll leave it.
The question I was going to ask is, would any future bus lane need a planning application of any type?
I wouldn't have thought so. No, I mean obviously, Matt, please correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly if anything was to come forward, we would obviously consult with Exeter City to make sure that if there were any issues, they would be able to let us know. But obviously, it would still go through the appropriate safety channels from our point of view.
There's permitted development rights to carry out highways works within the highway, but if those works extended beyond that, then it's probable, and I'll look to Roger maybe, it's probable that a planning application would be required for it.
I suppose my concern is if we gave consent for this and particular landscaping, would that landscape potentially be affected later on and then affect the setting of the building?
don't know the answer, I'm afraid. I've got a feeling, but
I've given up on partners.
I think the answer would be yes. It would require a planning application, but those issues would be considered at the time rather than there's only so much crystal ball gazing we can do at this stage.
I think what I mainly wanted to know was that should a change happen, it would be up to a planning committee to decide that change. And I think the answer I've got is yes. So I'm happy to move forward. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. Floor to ceiling height, what is it now? As it has been reduced.
That is detailed within the committee report.
I missed it then, sorry.
You should have. So
I couldn't see it, I missed it.
Story heights reduced from 2.322 to 2.925. Is that one?
yeah, sorry.
Oh, right,
Fifth
yeah,
bit down,
2.85.
section 3.
Yeah.
So the story has been reduced from 3.25 to 3 meters of ground and lower ground, from 2.925 to 2.85 at upper levels, reducing the overall building heights by 1 meter.
I'm not going to make you say that again. You can switch your microphones on because a lot of people thank you.
And the other question was on the right-hand side of the co-living block, there seems to be bedrooms off or units of accommodation, whatever you call them, off a long corridor. Now, as it's off, there can't be what natural light will be available on that corridor. On the one side, you can clearly have windows overlooking the area, the green, the internal green area. But on the right-hand side, it looks to be a long corridor with property with units either side.
Yeah, so
No,
the courtyard level has been elevated from lower ground to ground floor level now, except for this area, which is staying at the lower ground floor level. So there'll be natural light coming through there, but in terms of the rest of the corridor, clearly there are no windows.
So windows, and on the other side it'll be even darker because there's accommodation units both sides.
Yeah, that's a consequence of elevating the courtyard.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. For
Same question that Councillor Snow asked, actually, Chair. There's been answered. So
Right.
Councillor,
Branston, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
someone give him a microphone.
Thank you. It mentioned in brief that you actually are going to keep a few of the trees than you had before, but I don't actually see it unless I missed it. I'd like to know actually how many trees are actually still going to come down and bushes, and how many are actually going to be replaced.
So effectively all the trees are still going to be removed except for I think it's 5 along the frontage that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. So yeah, all the trees will be removed. So I mean, landscaping is a reserve matter. So in terms of the precise numbers, I'm sure that information is somewhere within this package of information, but I don't have it to hand, so I can't tell you exactly how many trees are removed and how many will be replaced. But suffice to say, they will all be removed except for those 5 at the front of the property. The developers are proposing more trees, as is normal when we have sites where trees must be removed to secure a development. We will, as officers, argue to provide a greater number of replacement trees, and we'll deal with that through the reserve matters application when the landscaping reserve matters are submitted. Okay, that's the best answer I can give right now.
Thank you, Matthew.
And then Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Have we got any illustration that can show to us the size of the existing footprint
on the site as against the footprint of the buildings now currently proposed? Is there an overlay that can show the literally the footprint of the buildings on the site, so we can get some comparisons about the amount of green space and other space compared to what is already there?
None of us haven't submitted a plan showing that overlay. So they provided the illustrative just showing a reduction in scale and massing, which I have picked as part of my presentation. The best that I could do was include the floor plans. So the red line there is effectively the dating point. It's the same point.
Yeah.
So you can see effectively the developers will remove one of the bedrooms on the left-hand side of the current proposal, and that's allowed them to bring the front of the building further back away from Heritage Road. So that's why I've shown it in this way on this part of my presentation. There isn't an overlay that's been provided.
So in your professional opinion, is the ground floor footprint of what's proposed greater than what is already on the site?
Sorry, the ground floor footprint of what is
Footprint
proposed.
of the buildings currently proposed.
Is it greater or lesser than the existing footprint of buildings on?
The existing buildings. I would say that this is greater because the existing buildings are quite sort of low density, I would say, in terms of the amount of space around it. They're not really what we would consider good urban design by current standards, where we would seek to address the roads more positively.
Okay, we've got no more questions. I'm going to bring forward Councillor Vizard, who's speaking under Standing Order number 44. You were here a week and a half ago, but for the benefit of the room, you do not have a time limit. But obviously, we do like it if you don't go on for hours. Thank you very much, Councillor Vizard.
Very much. My regular speaking slots. Good evening, members. I could simply repeat my speech from the last time this application came up, but I will spare you that. In fact, I will be brief, or at least briefer. Once again, it is a great pity that what is still proposed are two monolithic blocks, monotonous in design, out of all proportion and scale, and massing with little outside amenity for residents. In courtyards rather than open green space, really? Is that where we are? A high impact on the amenity of the area, and that would cause harm to the character of this part of the city. You voted to refuse this in September. The applicant was then generously given an opportunity to redesign and resubmit. They have done so with a few adjustments, but the provision of outside amenity space, especially for the public, remains poor. The setting back from Heavy Road is minimal and does next to nothing to address the issue of scale, and the visual amenity and harm to the character of the area is unchanged. This application still proposes nigh on 1,000 units, which would bring huge additional burden to the area's public amenities. There are a couple of things to address in the previous discussions. Firstly, the argument that this fits within the livable Exeter vision. It doesn't. Livable Exeter is about a bold and imaginative, high-quality, sustainable development in a garden city-style environment and homes for the broader population, not massive scale and harm to local heritage. This would make an ideal livable Exeter site, in fact, but this is not a livable Exeter development. A missed opportunity, in fact. Secondly, to address Councillor Light's powerfully made point about the need for more affordable homes in Exeter, I could not agree more, but that should not be at the expense of suitable scale and design or to the detriment of an area. It's not just quantity, but quality too. Otherwise, we may as well give up setting standards for our city in an already too powerful development market. It is too key a site to make such hefty compromises. Residents understand the need for housing and that this site will be developed, but believe me, they are desperately worried about this. It is also worth remembering that this part of Newtown and St Leonard's is a residential area. It is not a city centre site designated in the current local plan. So while suitable for a sensitive residential development, it is not appropriate for a mega high density development of the kind proposed. The development continues to cast a shadow over neighbours in Higher Summerlands and St Matthew's Close, and to clash uncomfortably with the St Luke's campus site and surrounding conservation areas. The loss of trees remains a serious concern to residents and to the council's tree manager, who sustains his objection to the of those to the west of the site bordering higher Summerlands. The design review panel queried why, after a long design development phase of 2 years, it is unclear from your current submission why you have adopted the alignment of the two blocks as you have, roughly 40–60% west to east on site. The break between the two buildings, it says, and its alignment with onward connections is unresolved, and the integration with the adjoining street scene underrepresented. Optioneering should be shown to demonstrate that alternative massing strategies have been considered within this particular context that demonstrate how the height and scale of the blocks respond appropriately to their surroundings. They've also queried the levels of daylight that will be afforded to the courtyards, as this will affect the amenity experience, and around the heritage impact as a landmark, and the skyline area and the views of the city from the city centre. Dix's Field, they mention in their report. They've also queried some concerns around the internal corridors. The application contradicts guidance in Safe Policy H5, the core strategy and the local plan around appropriate scale, massing, character, skyline and overdevelopment of particular types of accommodation. The Council's Heritage Officer has maintained his view that this would harm the setting of the locally listed St Luke's Chapel building. And what about the NPPF I flagged last time? And just to remind, it states that developments will function well and add to the overall quality of the area, not just for the short term, but over the lifetime of the development, are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, layout, and appropriate and effective landscaping, are sympathetic to local character and history, including the surrounding built environment and landscape setting, while not preventing or discouraging appropriate innovation or change. That they establish or maintain a strong sense of place, using the arrangement of streets, spaces, building types and materials to create attractive, welcoming and distinctive places to live, work and visit, and that they optimise the potential of the site to accommodate and sustain an appropriate amount and mix of development, including green and other public space, and support local facilities and transport networks. And finally, create places that are safe, inclusive and accessible, and which promote health and well-being with a high standard of amenity for existing and future users. I would query on each of those points whether this goes anywhere close to achieving those things. Last time I said that if you have concerns as planning members about whether this is the right development, whether it has the potential to harm this city gateway and the local community, to please vote against it. Last time, most of you agreed and did so. So what has changed? It's still too big, it's too dominant, and it's too harmful to the area. You refused it last time. It ended up being deferred. It's back, and it's still big, and it's still unsightly. Please reaffirm your objection to it and don't let this application through by stealth. There have been 118 public objections in total. I have never received so much correspondence on a planning issue, and I have handled some controversial applications. This really worries residents of Newtownlands and Leonards, me included. This committee has a big responsibility for shaping Exeter in the years ahead. This site is too prominent, too crucial to get wrong, and to lumber our ward with a beast of a development. Yes, the applicant may appeal. That's fine. Residents and ward councillors will fight that. I urge you to hear those objections and to refuse this application again this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vizard. Does anyone have any questions? Nope. Thank you very much for your time. Next to speak is an objector, member of the public, Andy Kitchen. Thank you very much. I'm afraid you do have a time limit, so 3 minutes and we will stop you.
Andy Ketchen. I am a local. Can you show
Okay, right. I'm Andy Ketchen, a local consultant doctor. Hideous, a carbuncle, a modern day slum, a monument to greed. This development should be finally refused today on the basis that so little has changed that it's essentially the same proposal as September's. It contravenes 4 Keystone Council planning documents 15 times. It contradicts the principles of the new Exeter local draft plan, the Council's vision for the city of the future, no less than 23 times. Regarding massing, there is only actually a 1 metre drop in total height, and the floor space has increased. The gorge next door, a co-living development, is beyond a nurse's salary. These dormitories will be affordable only to the likes of the foreign student market, and it will not therefore address Exeter's housing crisis. It may even have an inflationary effect on rents. Amenity and green space. Green space on this site has been eaten away to leave meaningless scraps. Livable space is not provided. Drawings show the student courtyard, for instance, never receives an hour of sunlight during term time. And this is because the courtyards are in contravention of National Planning Policy Framework minimum standards. The important higher Summerlands green space with existing mature tree barrier is ripped out. New co-living development is pressed up against these residences, and yet again, this is in contravention of NPPF minimum standards. The buildings are neither green nor energy efficient themselves, sadly. The student block is net zero only in the sense it will be net zero for council tax. And then there's livable Exeter. There's now a mental health policy for the site, and basically it tells people to do more exercise, maybe try some voluntary work. There's of course nothing about the loss of well-being in the surrounding community. It is a mockery. This development will force a whole swathe of society to go against basic principles of healthy living. So in summary, this development is city centre creep sandwiched between two residential conservation areas. This development is city centre creep, destroying the attractive nature of the key historic and civic gateway. And this development is city centre creep with local residents picking up the pieces. I will leave you with a quote from the council leader from the new Exeter local plan, who said, "We will ensure quality of life and well-being are at the heart of all decisions. It's about living better in Exeter."
Thank you, just in time. Does anyone have any questions for Anne? Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to explore the area of affordability with you and the views that you've stated that within the report it talks, I think it's page 71, around the affordability issue. You allude to the fact that, for example, a nurse couldn't afford that affordable housing. I would be somebody who would be very keen on and spend a lot of time talking about affordable housing here and on another council, but how affordable in your view is what's being provided?
Thank you for your question. I work with nurses, so I have a sort of view to what their feelings are on this. The gorge next door is the minimum rent is listed as 950 currently. The means test value for the securing a property or a dorm, if you like, in that co-living establishment is not within the scope of a nurse's salary, and so therefore I say with confidence that it doesn't meet affordability criteria unless it's for the 20% that are specifically singled out as a 20% reduction in rent value. So the mainstay of the rooms are not within affordable criteria, and that obviously beyond nurses, there's a whole other swathe of key workers that won't be able to afford that.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much. If you make your way back. And we've got someone speaking in support. That's Mr. Neil Howells, I believe. You also have 3 minutes, and I will interrupt you when we hit that point. If you can't stop.
Is the microphone on? Is red? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Neil Howells. Here to represent Student Roost, the joint applicants together with Devon and Cornwall Police on the application. So on the 10th of October 2022, members agreed to defer the application to enable us time to make amendments to the scheme to address the concerns that you had. Crucially, at the meeting, the principle of development was accepted and the erection of a mixed co-use and purpose-built student accommodation scheme was considered acceptable. As such, we committed to revisit matters of detail relating to height, massing, design, siting, landscaping, amenity impacts on surrounding properties, internal and external amenity, and tree loss. Since the deferral, further discussions have been held with officers and consultees, and the revised proposals were considered by Design West, a design review panel meeting on the 23rd of November. The scheme presented back today does so with a further recommendation for approval and a general endorsement from the design review panel. Specific changes made to the scheme can be summarised as follows. So the footprint of the building has been set back even further from Heavy Tree Road to 14.5 metres. This increases the distance to St Luke's College to 48 metres. The storey heights have also been reduced by up to 1 metre. The co-living building has been reduced by 1 storey with the top floor omitted, and the PBSA building has been reduced by 1 storey across 40% of the frontage. I should also add as well, just to address a comment that was raised earlier. So although the storey heights have been reduced, the floor to ceiling heights that are achieved on each floor are still well within acceptable parameters of at least 2.4 metres floor to ceiling per floor. And next to add to the changes in scale of the development proposed means that concerns about amenity, the amenity impact on adjacent properties have been addressed. This is also supported by an assessment of daylight and sunlight, which confirms that the properties on higher Summerlands will not be adversely affected by the proposals. The amendments made to the setting and scale of the proposals improve daylight in the communal courtyards. Moreover, the communal courtyard in the co-living building has been elevated to ground level, when it was previously at lower ground, as shown earlier. With the combination of the emission of the top stories, this will reduce the sense of enclosure. The communal courtyard to the PBSA building has also been redesigned as a single large courtyard, increasing this external amenity area by 77 metres squared to 1.2 metres squared per room, which is above average for a PBSA development. The buildings being set back along Heavy Tree Road also increases the on-site open external landscaped area from 5,600 metres squared to 7,200 metres squared, so a significant increase. And crucially, a significant change since the last committee is the increase in all room sizes in the co-living element.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have a question? Councillor Johnson, that's all.
Thank you. Is it right that some of these properties will not get sunlight?
No, I mean, there's various levels of sunlight depending on the orientation of the room.
Direct sunlight. They might get some daylight, but sun won't come in through the windows.
Well, so not all rooms will get direct sunlight, no, but you wouldn't expect all rooms to get direct sunlight.
And the courtyard will, although it's a little higher, will also not always get sunlight.
Well, the courtyard has been raised up by a storey, and the building has been lowered by a storey, so the amount of sunlight hitting the courtyard will be increased.
Well, be very little.
One meeting.
Thank you.
I think it's worth bearing in mind as well that within the courtyard, you don't necessarily want it to be direct sunlight on the courtyard all day long and all year long. You want the courtyard to be usable at different times of the year, so actually having some shading is as beneficial as having additional sunlight. So we feel that the proposals to increase the level and lower the storey heights help to meet that balance.
Shading is one thing, but total shade, constant shade is quite another.
Yeah, well,
That's not a question. Thank you, Councillor Light.
My question was just regarding the whether you think that this is affordable for the people that it's aimed at, and just a question around how you decided what you would be charging those people.
Yeah, so I guess I would point to other co-living developments that we've built and operate currently, not in Exeter but in other cities, which are extremely popular. They're extremely popular with graduates and young professionals and people that have a real demand for this type of housing. So by virtue of the fact that they're occupied and they're fully occupied and they let very quickly, I think that demonstrates the demand and demonstrates that they're affordable. I think it's also worth bearing in mind as well that 20% of the co-living units are at affordable levels as well, so there's 20% discount, so that's also to be factored in.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor, further clarification on this. Quite clearly, the PBSA units are licensed and students only may use them.
Correct.
No problem at all. You've not included any summertime use or within your application.
There's no summertime.
No, not for Airbnb or anything else. But secondly, in regard to the co-living block, my understanding, looking at other Vantage guidelines, is that whilst they're intended as you say, for young people in the area to live. They may also be rented by students. Is that correct?
And they're certainly not aimed at students, and the intention is not that they're occupied by students. We've got other schemes that are specifically restricted, so they can't be occupied by students. So that's not what they're. That's not.
So is there such a restriction on this co-living block, so you cannot let additional students live there?
No, I don't.
Councillor Mitchell, every time you ask this question, I give you the same answer, which is any building that's built in Exeter could have students living on it if it's residential. So there is a chance, as there is every time we approve a 4-bedroom house. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. In that case, I'm going to open this to debate. Who would like to? Oh, hello. You want to wrap up? Okay. Go for your life.
Thanks. Well, I want to start really by saying thank you to the committee. It's been a long journey, hasn't it? We've been here 3 times now to look at this, and you've shown a lot of patience and understanding. I think the design review panel at its last meeting actually drew attention to that and said that you were right to give more time to this and allow the applicant to try and address some of your concerns. I think my team as well here, Matt's here tonight, they worked really hard and really closely over many months to try and get a scheme to you that has explored all the issues and given you all the information that you need. So I think we've kind of reached that point now. I think all the information is here for you tonight and in the reports and in the presentations that you've heard. So I just wanted to really just draw from that just a few strategic points, you know, as your directors, I think are really important when we consider these sorts of very major and important applications for Exeter. So the homes issue is probably the most important one. So we're a really confident and prosperous city, aren't we? And we're desperate for more homes, particularly in the city centre, because we know that there's a lot of people out there that want those homes to live, to study, and to work. And it's attracting those people that will grow our economy and be the city that we want it to be in the future. So we need these homes. There's nearly 1,000 being proposed here, and every single one of those homes has been designed specifically, as you've heard, for students and for young professionals by experienced people who've done this in many other towns and cities. They've also followed industry good practice, and the improvements that they've been making to those living conditions for those people are significant. We've got larger rooms, we've got more amenity space, more communal space, and a better external environment. Of course, this scheme, if you were to approve it tonight, would also make significant contributions to existing public spaces and parks. Of course, none of that should be at the expense of the amenity of existing people that live nearby. Absolutely. There's been a lot of technical evidence on that issue that's been presented to you, and it does show that you can look at that very closely now and make your own view about that. There's also that issue about the impact on existing services that has been touched on, but also the economy of the city centre. The footfall that this would result from will increase local businesses. So there's some design issues there in all of that, of course, and that's probably, these are the most difficult issues for you to reconcile. What the applicant has done is remove a whole story from the co-living block and part of a story from the PBSA block. But there's a lot of other architectural devices that have gone into the thinking since you last saw this scheme. And the impact of that has been to soften the appearance of the building, particularly along Heavy Tree. There's also that potential for more trees and more landscaping because they have set the building back even further. And as we've heard, that will be subject to more detailed consideration. But the potential is there to end up with more trees than we have at the moment, and more significant trees that would add to the biodiversity along Heavy Tree. So in terms of sustainability, so this is actually hard to find a more sustainable location. So we're opposite St. Luke's campus. We're 5 minutes cycle ride from the city centre, and we're on a major transport bus route into town. And then the last sort of strategic issue is around brownfield. So this council has set out its stall. It wants to develop these brownfield sites. This is actually an eyesore site at the moment. It's a detriment to the city, and particularly along the key gateway. So new buildings will improve that outlook, and particularly will repair that damaged brownfield site. So in terms of me concluding in terms of where officers come from this, as I've said, over the lifetime of the application, even prior to that, I don't actually think I've seen an application that's been changed so much in terms of trying to address various issues. There's been 4 independent design reviews. The applicant has sat with my team for months to try and look at improvements. And as I've said, you've allowed that time to enable that to happen, which is a good process, it's a good thing. So you've heard from people who've expressed very strong views tonight and previously, and they've expressed those views on the revised plans. I've noted with interest that the Civic Society has withdrawn its application, its objection, sorry. But there are many others out there who we've not heard from. People who potentially could benefit from a scheme like this. Now, those people don't have a voice at the moment, but we have to remember as well that there are these wider benefits to a scheme like this that I've articulated. So back in September, you challenged the scheme quite a bit on I'm coming to an end, don't worry. You challenged the applicants on what would be an acceptable scheme in terms of limits, particularly on that frontage and along Gladstone Road. I think what they've tried to demonstrate is that they've addressed those concerns. They've tried to bring in more articulation, more sort of architectural depth to the buildings to try and address that sense of scale. It's for you to decide now whether they've achieved that. So you have a choice, you absolutely have a choice. No decision has been made yet. You can consider whether these revised plans sufficiently overcome your concerns, in which case you can grant planning permission. If you don't feel that they overcome your concerns, of course you have the alternative option, and the reasons for refusal were laid out for you back in October. What I would say in the end is to say that if you feel so confident, or if you feel that this scheme is so harmful to those interests that we've accepted, then you must refuse the application. However, if you feel that there are these overarching benefits that we've articulated as well, then it is within your gift. You can grant planning permission because of those overarching concerns. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Gonna say yes because it's just spoken again, but I'm trying to wind this into the actual debate.
Just a factual question, really. For clarity for us and the audience here, when you were talking about housing at the beginning. Could you please clarify in planning terms what's the difference between housing and accommodation? As a layperson, I've got a clear understanding what housing and a home means. I've got a clear understanding what accommodation is when I stay in a hotel. You also mentioned the housing supply figures and what impact this might have on our housing supply figures, whether it is accommodation or housing. What qualifies it to be housing as distinct from accommodation? What's the planning difference?
The definition for co-living and supply figures was given an appeal, and we've had a conversation about that before, which is that so many for one would be one household. I can't off the top of my head tell you what it was, and it doesn't look like it either.
There's a more simple answer.
Yeah. As long as it's quick, because I really would like to hear from them.
This is homes for people to live in. It's as simple as that.
So PBSA are homes.
They're homes for people to live in.
PBSA isn't homes co-living, it's homes. PBSA is temporary accommodation for students, just like houses of multiple occupancy. Co-living, you can live there for 6 months, you can live there for 3 years. You know, I've lived in houses I've owned for less than 3 years. You know, that I think that definition is probably not helpful, to be honest. Anyhow, now I would like to hear from the members of the committee and open up the debate. Councillor Branston.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Ian Collison on what he just said. I mean, he's really spoke up well on behalf of students and co-living. I can well understand that. That's where you're coming from. My position is slightly different. I know it's not appropriate to say, but the fact is that we have a responsibility, all the councillors, to look after the local people who live here. So I'll leave it to that. But what I would say that no doubt there has been some changes, let's be honest about it. However, this application will still have a very significant impact on the surrounding buildings and this, which includes the university and the residents of Summerland. I think that's still an issue, and the local houses round about. I think that the application is clearly not appropriate in this residential area, and I know that there's been still 118 objections, and that's really something that people don't give up just because another application has been made. It's still stood out and raised a lot of issues which have been made, particularly with regard to the height and the design. I just don't think, I just think it's poor. I'll be short, but what I will say, in the report, it was very clear that very few trees will be retained. We talked about 5, definitely. We don't know what the rest is, which is contrary, absolutely contrary to the council's policy with regard to trees. The objections are reasonable, and the presentation from Councillor Matt Vizard and Mr. Kitchen are compelling, and I will be voting against it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bialik.
Being so quick, I would have thought. All part of one contribution, Chair. I'm not going to try and come in again. Three questions, very quick answers, and then I'll just a quick contribution. Hopefully, in a moment, the director can confirm this is not a livable Exeter site. That's the first thing. Just confirm that in a moment. The second is the national policy over the distances between this and Sunderland Street. Is it compliant? Because we heard from the speaker that it wasn't compliant. I need to know, is it compliant with the legislation or the policy framework? What was said by the objector? That was the other thing. And then can you just confirm that the levels of rent of the place is not a matter for this planning committee, so therefore we shouldn't consider those things. Then really questions to people, and I'm glad I spoke reasonably early, is I'd like to hear from members if this is about the people who are going to occupy the place or the planning application itself. Because I've heard that we would like residential, and I'm suppose you've had a lot of meetings, and I'm just thinking, if it was residential, would it look from the outside a lot different to that? Maybe spaces inside. Are we going to? It's not going to be like semi-detached houses and that sort of stuff, because it wouldn't be viable. I'm assuming it wouldn't be viable, and I would have thought they would have considered that in the first place. So I think would I be right to assume, and I need to be put out of my misery on this, that we would have been looking at something very similar to this sort of building with fewer people in, but that's what, as we're walking by or whatever, it may look something like that in any event. And that's all I really need to know. And I want to get away from this of marginalising the sorts of people who may be living or staying temporarily or whatever in there. So those couple of points, Chair, will help me make my decision.
the stuff we want the committee to answer? Or just the first three questions?
So on the livable Exeter question, so this was an area that was included the very early sort of days of sort of where livable Exeter or locations could be. In my mind, the livable Exeter site is City Point, so it doesn't go Heavy Tree Road. Okay. Simon's here on the legal side, but I don't believe whatever rents are charged for these homes are a consideration for this committee. What we do know is that there is that if you were minded to grant approval, there is a stipulation that 20% of the co-living would be below market affordable homes.
So we have a residential design SPD from 2010, and that follows what has been established as a sort of typical urban design guidance of having a back-to-back separation distance of, I think we state 23 meters, but in most places it's 20 meters. In this instance, it's not a back-to-back relationship, it is a front-to-front relationship. So I draw your attention to Appendix 3 of the committee report, the urban design officer's comments who supports the scheme. He's talked about this issue in paragraph 5.3 and basically said that the separation distance, because it is a front-to-front relationship, isn't problematic, and I agree with that. We don't have a specific policy dealing with front-to-front relationships, but if you read all the text in our residential design SPD, it does talk about having more flexible standards within urban areas, and I've cited this a number of times for various projects I've brought before this committee before. So I would refer members to that. And also there's a standard rule, the 25-degree rule, in terms of an indication of whether a building would have an impact on existing buildings in terms of levels of light, where effectively you draw a 25-degree angle from a window facing towards a building from a certain height. And the developers have referenced this quite a bit in their proposal, showing that this the co-living building does comply with that what is considered good practice. So we don't have a specific policy in that regard.
Councillor Jobson, then Councillor Bolt, and Councillor Howard.
Thank you. I start with the remarks made in the ECC, Urban Design and Landscape Officers report, where it says the reduced heights now proposed for the enclosing rooms of accommodation are expected, and I think that's important, expected to provide adequate daylight. No certainty that it will, just an expectation that it might. Yeah. Sunlight is not available to all rooms. Yeah. We looked at the scheme, and on one side at least you have a long corridor with rooms off either side. That's not a home, that's a unit of accommodation. It really is. It's not good design. It is not going to be good for people's welfare and well-being. And we all know how important open space was during the pandemic to young people and older people. And this is not going to have the amenity space. For the students, apparently they can walk around a courtyard. Well, that's nice for them. And then there's a courtyard for the co-living unit as well. I listened carefully to what Councillor Vizard said, and I agree with his comments. This, in spite of attempts made to make a very unappealing design appealing, it is still unappealing. It is a huge development on this site. Too many people, too many being crammed into a small place. And I'm really sorry for all the reasons that in the last time I objected to it. I will be objecting again because I do not think that there have been significant improvements. Thank you.
Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Chair. I too would agree with Councillor Vizard. It's been stressed how much this application has changed. Maybe it's changed so much because it was so awful to begin with. carbuncle word I hear your colleague use. And my other point is that I would not want to marginalise who may or may not rent it, but I would have to say, I've said this before, 4 of my 5 children could be classed as young professionals. They all earn just above minimum wage. And if they paid £950 per calendar month for their property, they would be investing 3/4 of their salary after stoppages. Is a non-starter. So those are kids who work in IKEA, work as nurses, works as a classroom assistant, and another one who works in retail. They don't have they don't have mortgages because they don't have permanent contracts. They have a temporary contract or a 0-hour contract or a bonus-related contract or a short-term contract. They can't get a mortgage. They're at the mercy of private investors. So again, while not wanting to marginalise, we have to recognise we do research as a council to look into the sort of accommodation that is needed. And the sort of accommodation we've highlighted is affordable occupation, not just occupation paid by mummy and daddy of kids in this country or abroad. I didn't realise I wasn't being nice. Nevertheless, the students cannot necessarily afford from their own pocket that sort of monthly salary. And I think that's something that's only 1 metre shorter in total, something where the height and massing issue is still not being addressed properly, and somewhere where the courtyards lack sufficient sunlight, do not warrant our support and certainly will not receive mine this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fern. Councillor Hannibal.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm really following on from what Councillor Fowler has just said. Page 92 and 18.0 of the recommendation in regard to the 20% of the co-living units will be affordable private rented. So again, can I explore with the lead officers, again, following on from the examples that Councillor Fowler has given, because yes, I get the bigger picture and the design concept, but I'm just trying to tease out the allocation of this 20% and who we are aiming that at, because we need to retain our graduates from the university, but on the other hand, we also need the essential low-paid workers for the city as well. So how are we going to, or who is going to allocate the 20%, and who are we aiming that? Will it be the IKEA worker, the junior nurse? Who is that aimed at, please?
Well, through you, Chair. It's the same principle we've applied with the co-living schemes that have been permitted on the Harlequin site and the adjacent ambulance station site, as well as the build-to-rent apartments that have been permitted on the Exmouth Junction site. And it follows the National Planning Practice Guidance for what's classed as build-to-rent housing. So it only allows us to reduce the rent by 20%. So that is effectively following the same principles that have been granted already on the other similar developments in the city.
Can I just come in on that? With the previous 2 developments, it was key workers. So is this specified as key workers, or is it just an open?
Apologies, Chair. Yeah. So we've just followed exactly the same principles for this scheme as the other schemes mentioned. So we did specify the first co-living scheme that you granted was on the Harlequins site, and through that we made sure through the legal agreement that the affordable units following the national policy would first priority would be to essential local workers. I believe that included health workers, education workers, and I think I recall members specifically asked for it to apply also to retail workers.
I think you're correct, because we gave that consent during lockdown. We were all at home doing those applications, and I think at the time we very much were recognising the importance of key workers in retail. Okay, the final person I have time to, if I let Councillor Lights in, and then Rachel will follow you.
Okay, so I supported this application before, as many of you remember, so it would be strange if I didn't support it now, and I think it's a better application. I'm not going to go over all the reasons, I think we've covered those already. I like that it's on a brownfield site. It is an ugly site. I walk past the site quite a lot, and I'm glad to see it used, frankly. But I want to talk a little bit about, so bear with me here, the need for housing, because I feel like I say this all the time and it just isn't going anywhere. If you own your own house and you have a garden and lots of sunlight, that's great. You are very fortunate, but there is a generational divide here where my generation and people younger than me cannot find places to live. Okay, and this is because two reasons. One, you're right, Councillor Cole. The wages, people aren't being paid enough wages, but we can't do that. We're not in government. We don't get to say anything about that. And the second reason is a lack of houses, whether you're talking about key workers or students or families like myself. So in my ward, there's a huge issue with HMOs. There are so many properties being turned into HMOs that are then taken by students because they need somewhere to live, that my constituents came to me, and I had multiple meetings last year where they said, will you take this forward and stop this happening? There's very little we can do about this, but I did what I could. I helped to take forward the Article 4 directive, which will take over a year now for the, while they gather data and that comes back. But basically the Article 4 is a review into HMOs, what are they bringing to these areas, these residential areas, and can that be remedied? Now, I took that forward because there are so many residents in my ward who are concerned that these houses are being turned into HMOs. They're being turned into HMOs for students because the students need somewhere to live. Just because you turn down purpose-built housing for students doesn't mean the students disappear into nowhere. In fact, you're pretty much voting instead in favour of HMOs, because that is often where they end up having to live. Now, I am one of these families that has impacted this. I have been trying to move for over 2 years. I rent a small house. I have 2 growing children, and I have a 2-bed house, and they desperately need their own rooms. I work very hard so that I can provide for them, but I cannot find somewhere to live because there is a shortage of housing. If you turn this application down, 646 units for students, how many houses is that now? How many family homes disappear in residential areas because the students need somewhere to live? I'm not going to be one of those people, though, that shouts about students, because they're actually in the same boat as me. I have tried so hard to move house for so long. I have visited houses with damp where you can touch the windows and there is black mold, black damp on the windows, and I've turned them down because I will not subject my children to that. It leads to respiratory issues. It's a huge issue. I have been to houses where I work full time and I have to view these houses around the school runs, and I've said, please, can you fit me in? I'll come first thing in the morning after the school run. And then they ring me up in the morning and they say, it already went. It went within an hour. That is why it is so hard for me to find somewhere to live where there is space for me and my children. There is a shortage of houses. Many of us are not fortunate enough to have a nice, comfortable home with somewhere to live. Okay, so we're talking about responsibilities to local people. Councillor Branson, how about responsibility to families in my position? How about responsibility to us? We're talking about £950 being too much for people to pay, Councillor Paul. I pay this much in rent. I've been paying this much in rent for years. I am fortunate enough that my landlord actually didn't kick me out of this house a few years ago when he had a change of circumstances, and he said, I'm moving back to Exeter. And I begged him, because I said, if you kick me out, I cannot find somewhere to live. I viewed one property where the landlord liked me, and I really, sold that I really needed somewhere to live, and I worked hard, and I showed him my payslips, and he said, the next day, he said, I've given it to someone without children. Isn't that terrible? And it's true, my children are going to cause wear and tear in the house, but they are free to do that because there are not enough houses, and someone else will take that house, and someone else will take these houses. Even if they were twice the price, someone else will live there. What that does is it frees up houses for the rest of us who are not so fortunate to have a home to come home to with a garden and lots of space and perfect sunlight. I'm sorry, but reality is we don't have that.
Thank you.
Final point. The final point. The space. This is a choice between a space for families with growing children versus the risk of us being homeless because it is so hard for us to find somewhere to live.
Thank you, Councillor Alliance. Councillor Sutton.
even though that's happening. Thank you. I'll try not to repeat things that have been said by colleagues. I'll start by saying that this is a city centre site. It's on the edge of the city centre. It's a brownfield site and it is going to be developed. And I don't think anybody would say that the Heavy Police Station there has been contributing positively to the landscape of the city. I mean, most of it is porta cabins, multi-storey porta cabins, for goodness sake. Councillor Lights has spoken very powerfully and I think very movingly on behalf of her generation. And one of the points that I wrote down here is that people with houses, and I count myself fortunate to be one of those people, commenting on people who don't have houses is a bit rich. It may not be a brilliant design, it may not be particularly beautiful, and it certainly isn't perfect. And I've sat on this planning committee for the best part of a decade, and I've yet to see anything that has been perfect. And I strongly suspect that nobody ever will. Design is a personal view, and very many of us may well look at any property, be it something like this or a different sort of apartment or a house, and say, no, that's not for me. It doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit my family. It doesn't suit my lifestyle. But that doesn't mean that somebody else won't look at it and go, you know what, that's going to work for me. And there have certainly been times in my life when I had a good deal less clutter than I currently own. And living in this kind of accommodation would actually have suited me well as a young graduate who was moving jobs, probably every 18 months, 2 years. And this was exactly the sort of accommodation that would have been great, because believe you me, I have lived in some pretty awful flats, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. If you cast our minds far enough back, who've lived in some pretty grotty places. And I think Councillor Lights has spoken very powerfully in explaining about the impact on the market. We've also heard about how much these are going to cost. Well, if these are overpriced and people can't afford to live in them, then they won't be rented, and the people who own the blocks will have to lower the rent. It's called capitalism. It will sort itself out. It is the market. But I am inclined to agree with Councillor Lights that there will be people who can afford to live in them. And I don't think this is perfect. But I do think it is going to make a positive contribution and it is going to help. I am going to vote in support of it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take an opportunity to sum up, having read through a little bit. I agree with Councillor Lights and Councillor Sutton, and I actually don't object to the use on this site. I don't have an issue with co-living, and I also prefer it to PBSA, but I also know we're not hitting our targets for the percentage of people that should be living in PBSA at this time. I also know that I've just, I'm about to sign off at Executive an Article 4 direction consultation because of the amount of houses and multiple occupancy in the Pennsylvania and Durryard areas, St James areas, which are now are coming along and not only taking the houses out of the market, which is really important, but is disrupting roads and households, and we need to have a balance with those houses of multiple occupancy, because there are not management schemes, there are not rules on how much they park or how many cars they park. They are not car-free developments. They are just houses of multiple occupancy that come with 3 permits, and they come with as many loud people as you want and nobody to tell you to be quiet. So I don't have an issue with those uses. What I do have an issue with is the design of this application. And whilst I will say it has improved since the last time, I have to agree with Councillor Fowl that it wasn't that great to begin with. And maybe if this was our starting point, we'd get to a point with a decently designed application. But this is 2 years worth of negotiations, and we're still looking for something that I believe is overbearing and not in keeping with the area. And it isn't a livable Exeter site, because I would like to believe that if it was a livable Exeter site, it would be more attractive than what we're looking at the moment. I don't think there's an issue with density. I don't think height's necessarily always a problem. It just needs to be done sympathetically and with a bit more style than we've got here. So I will be voting against this application on grounds of the scaling, the massing mixed with the design, and the impact on the I believe I know it's a reserved matter, but the loss of those trees is something that we should be having more of a conversation about. But I do wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Lights and Councillor Sutton that we should not be judging what people deem a home when we are comfortably sat in homes that are warm and large and have a big garden. Councillor Martin, I have closed the debate, so you can't come in now. Sorry. Okay.
I don't have a house. I live in my mum's loft. So when you talk about the generational issue, it's not necessarily a generational issue.
I'm not going to comment on your age, Marina.
Thank you. A lot of people that I know, statistically speaking or not, who I went to school with, do not own their own homes. So
it's a point of clarification, not point of order, but thank you very much, Marina. So I'm going to move this to the vote and see all those who are in favour, please raise your hands.
All in favour.
All those against?
No.
So I'm going to defer this application to you bring back to the next planning committee with reasons for referral. I don't think it is any longer healthy for us to carry on this debate. I will expect it to be a refusal at that position at that time, as is wanted by this committee, and we'll leave it to other beings to decide whether this is a good idea or not. We have deferred the application to come back to be refused, but I don't want to open up another debate on whether changes can be made. I think now it's time. No, you've deferred it because we're going to come back with proper reasons as we did last time. Do you want to do it now? Okay. No. The officers have made 5 objections, reasons for refusal. If you're happy to hear all 5 and vote on which ones you think are relevant, I will do that now. Because I just would like the decision to be made one way or another.
So, through you, Chair, Appendix 2 lists the reasons for refusal that were drafted following the debate that members had in September. I do think that members need to give us a steer on what they want us to draft reasons for, because I think there were about 5 reasons, but this is a different proposal with a different number of units and a different design. So I think members need to give us an indication what they want to refuse it on.
Just a minute. Can everyone stop talking to me a second? I want to understand what's happening, and then I will come back to you. Okay, so just give me a minute, okay? So where are these reasons for refusal?
Appendix 2 is the
108.
108.
One away won't work for me. Right, so these are 5 reasons. I'm going to read them to you, and then we will decide if they're relevant to our decision. Sorry,
I didn't have my microphone on for that, so the people at the back, I'm going to read out each of the reasons, and then given your opinions that you shared during the debate, I want you to let me know which ones are them, because they might not all be relevant, and I need you to understand that there's no point putting them in if they're not actually what your concerns are. Right, so reason 1 is that the proposed development would harm the character of the area, including the street scene along Herefordshire Road and Glanstone Road and the setting of the locally listed St Luke's College buildings by virtue of the heights and massing of the 2 buildings, which would be far greater scale than the majority of the buildings in the area, and the siting in close proximity to the streets makes them feel more imposing on their surroundings. The proposed development is therefore contrary to policy CP17 of the core strategy, which requires all proposals for development to complement or enhance Exeter's character and local identity. Saved policies H5 and DG1 of the local plan, first plan review 1995 to 2011, and paragraphs 130 and 197C of the NPPF 2021. I'm quite happy for that to reflect what I said. Is all those in favour? Yeah.
The siting
This the phrase of the site in close proximity to the street. Now the building's been moved back. Is that still relevant?
I think it's relevant, and the other streets around it. It's not just those at the front. I would argue, and I'm just chair. You don't need to madam in front of it. Sorry, this is all the Express and Echo's fault for calling me a chairman last time in the paper. The proposed Item 2 is the proposed development would harm the amenity, privacy and outlook of the adjacent residential properties, particularly in higher Summerlands, due to the height, scale and massing of the proposed buildings on the site and their siting in close proximity to the properties, taking into account their designs. The proposed development is therefore contrary to safe policies H5A and DG4B of the Exeter Local Plan First Review 95 to 2011 and paragraph 130F of the MPPF. I'm going to put it to you before I do. I'm not sure, having heard what was said earlier by the officer, that I necessarily agree with that statement, but it's up for you as members of the committee to make that decision. So those in favour of that reason, please raise your hands. Yep, you may.
Take out the word particularly in higher Summerlands, because I think that was, I don't think it was part of the amenity privacy and outlook of the adjacent residential properties.
I don't think it does, but it's your decision. Would you like to remove that? I think specifically it is the impacts on higher Summerlands as the only ones that are residential community is badly hit by it, being to the left. So I'm not sure removing that sentence actually strengthens the statement.
Chair, point of order. How are we capturing and actually governing this? Because you're going down 1 to 5. I think you've already encapsulated in your summing up actually the 5 areas.
We have to decide our reasons.
But you're taking votes in favour of, for example, item 1, but not against. You're not. Did somebody have to propose an amendment to item 2? I think it seems a bit informal. How you're.
I don't think it is being informal. I think I'm getting a general feeling for the reasons for refusal. We normally have to give the reasons before we refuse.
Is that for a planning committee recommendation?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that the solicitor wouldn't be allowing us to do this if it was an issue, but go ahead.
My understanding is the plan is to come back to the next committee.
No, it's not anymore. No. We're making the decision now.
That's right.
Yeah, go for it.
So we had this, so through the chair, we had this debate in October, and you were very clear. Sorry, in September, you were very clear you wanted to come back with reasons for refusal. So Matt and his team drafted those 5 reasons. So tonight was about whether you wanted to override those reasons and grant planning permission. You've decided not to. So we're reverting back to those 5 reasons, and we're simply saying which of those 5 do you want to refuse this planning application for. We then take those 5 reasons and they go into the notice of decision, which becomes a legal document. That document potentially would be the document that the appellant would then appeal to the Secretary of State. So we need to be absolutely clear about the wording of the reasons for refusal. You asked us to go and draft that wording, which we've done, and we're simply asking you now, which of those 5, it could be all 5, or it could be just one of them. Either way, it's still a refusal. It's on what grounds you want to refuse the application.
We're not changing the decision we've made. We're purely giving our reasons for refusal now. Yeah.
Chair,
I don't know what I should suggest.
we've got 5 reasons here based upon an application we considered in October. We this evening in February have discussed a fresh application. In the professional, an updated application, an amended application.
It's an amended application. If the application deferred to that was different to that extent, it would be a new application. I can't remember what word I was going to use.
What I was going to ask you.
So these are relevant to a debate we have previously had on the application that we originally received, which is minor amendments that should be brought back to us, and we still don't like it. Okay.
All I was asking the officer, in the light of the minor amendments, in his professional view, do we need to alter any of these refusal points?
So what I think is important for you to do is consider those 5 reasons in the light of the additional
information that you've had from the applicant, the updated plans. It's perfectly possible for you to decide that one or more of those reasons no longer applies because of the changes that they've made. The clear thing is that you want to refuse the planning application, and it's on what grounds. So you just need to decide so that we can then give the best possible outcome for you should this be appealed. So we need to know from you those reasons. For that reason, you asked us to draft the reasons, which we've done. So it's now for you to decide which of those 5 reasons you want to refuse the planning application on.
Also, bearing in mind, we have previously been advised that not all reasons for refusal are beneficial if they're not strong. Yeah.
That's why I asked, well, what has changed?
Yeah, but it's Michael, it's our final decision. The officers cannot make that decision for us, so that's why I need to ask you. I also think it's important that the members of the public hear the reasons we're refusing it.
Yeah. Can I ask a little bit of help from the officer? In other words, there are 5 reasons there from the last time. There has been some change which is not proven acceptable to the committee. Can you metaphorically switch the light on for us so we can find the door out? In other words, can you tell us, in your professional view, from listening to the views of the members, help us, because that's what you do, help us in relation to what we've said, which has been to help us pick out these 5, rather than, because we'll be here guessing all night otherwise.
Through you, Chair, I think, the members need to tell us what they want to refuse the application on. Some of the reasons drafted previously are clearly out of date. They refer to figures or numbers units which related to the old scheme. So I think the best bet is you go through each one, as we were doing so, and you look at each one. I think it was working well, and I think members need to, vote on each one basically, because we're not clear on how many members agree with each reason or not.
Right, so back to item 2. Would you like me to do proper votes? And anybody would like to amend item 1? Rob?
Well, just the point of order, Chair. That's what I was alluding to. We were taking votes for. We're not capturing against or abstentions, and therefore it's a planning committee, and we're making recommendations.
I've just said we're going to do this. Well, you don't need to make the point. In a minute, I am going to just let the deputy chair do this because I'm getting.
Well, that's up to you, Chair, isn't it?
I'm just getting.
I'm entitled to make a point of order.
Yeah,
and I don't want us to make a recommendation that doesn't stand up.
Right, could we just have 10 seconds while everybody takes a deep breath and calms down? Thank you. Right, we have reached the point in the meeting where we have made a decision. What we now have to do is to actually identify, which Councillor Moss was attempting to do, the reasons for refusing this application. Okay, it's not that difficult. We've got them in front of us. So can I just ask that we just calmly identify where changes have happened since the application that we debated, and when we came up with this list at the October meeting, I believe, so that when we actually have these reasons for refusal, they are absolutely watertight. Yep. Okay, are we all in agreement? That's what we need to do. Thank you. Okay, now my understanding is that we have all agreed that point number 1 at the top of page 108, the sentence that starts, the proposed development would harm the character of the area. We have agreed that. Yep. Yes.
Only have 4. That's right.
Right. Okay. Now, is it your view that we should vote on? Okay. In that case, we will take a vote. Can I see everybody who is in favour of the first reason being one of the reasons for refusal? All those in favour?
10, Chair.
Okay, anyone against? Anyone abstaining? 2. No. Okay, fine. We now move on to point number 2. Proposed development would harm the amenity, privacy and outlook for adjacent residential properties. Now, we were having some discussion about whether that had changed. Is it your view, Matt, that this has changed, or does this still stand as a potential reason for refusal?
I would suggest it still
You
stands.
okay?
And that's what I've heard from them.
Okay, that's fine. In which case, can I actually see all those in favour of this reason number 2 as a reason for refusal?
That's 10.
Okay. Any against?
Nobody against.
And I will abstain on that. Thank you. Reason number 3 is the proposed development would have limited amount of external amenity space for used by the high number of residents, etc., etc. You've all got it in right. Is this still appropriate in your view, Matt?
The application has changed. There is more external amenity space in the current proposal than there was previously, and the number of rooms has decreased previously. So it's up to members to make the determination as to whether this reason still applies to the current revised proposal or not.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Johnson.
Can I suggest that one of the changes that was proposed by the developer was the size of the studios combined with the amount of internal shared community space had risen in both series, and that sentence is perhaps not appropriate now, with the remainder being that the internal courtyards would provide a poor living environment for residents that could have a negative impact on their health and well-being. But I welcome some guidance as to whether the increase in size, and I think that the communal areas was larger than that proposed for Harlequin, whether that is any longer.
Yeah, I mean, we need to make sure that we're using the strongest possible reasons for refusal, and if there is any doubt about that, then we should be amending them at this stage, which is why I asked the question now. I will take views of the committee. Does anyone feel strongly that we should either not use this or we should make an amendment to point number 3? Councillor Hanford.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important that we amend it as you suggest, because there has been some changes, but I think the concerns remain about the appropriateness, and I still think the sentence here, or partial sentence, have a negative impact on their health and well-being is still relevant.
Okay. Does somebody want to? Someone got a form of words, because for the officer's sake, we need to be absolutely clear. Matt, are you able to help us on this?
I think from what I've heard, members are happy with the first sentence. The second sentence that refers to the small size of the studios within the co-living block combined with the amount of internal shared communal space within the building, that given that they've doubled the amount of communal amenity space than the previous design, that you want to omit that part.
Yep.
Just that bit from in addition to within
Yeah.
the building, and then leave the rest.
That's fine. Yeah,
Yep.
understood.
Yeah.
Are we all clear of what we've actually just done?
Yeah.
Yes? Can I see all those in favour of this amended condition 3? Okay. Okay. Any against? Any abstentions?
2 abstaining.
Okay. Reason number 4, notwithstanding the applicant's agreement, etc., etc., are we content that this is still appropriate and relevant?
I mean, through you, Chair, again, it's up to members whether they want to have this reason for the current proposal, given that the number of units has decreased from the previous September scheme. If members did want to stick with this reason for refusal, then obviously I would recommend amending the figures to update them as per the current report. But so that's easy enough. But I think members need to say whether they still want this reason for refusal, given that there was no objection from the public and green spaces team.
Okay.
Just ask a question about if the figures are adjusted because of fewer bed spaces, is the figure go down or up? I assume down.
Down. There are fewer dwellings as per the presentation, so the figures will go down.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's certainly in terms of leisure, obviously, and community, as has been argued by the director, there could well be benefits and extra provisions being made. But again, the particular issue that's come up before is the health issue, and in terms of access to what are the GP waiting lists locally? Would these people, when they do move in, if they move in, struggle? I think I think we can. The leisure worries me less because we've just got a brand new leisure centre and things like that. But access to GPs and other medical facilities, I think, would be a concern. For example, the constant sword of Damocles, it's always hanging over the walk-in centre in Sidwell Street, for example.
So you're arguing that this is still appropriate to.
I think some of it.
Well,
Does anyone want to make any other than altering the figures, which we've accepted clearly do need to be amended?
Through you, Chair, the reason for refusal states that proposed development would have a negative impact on public spaces in the locality of the site. It doesn't refer to impact on other infrastructure.
Okay, so we are content. Can I see everybody who is content with reason 4 as a reason for refusal then, subject to the figures being amended? Yes. Yep. Anyone against? Abstentions?
10.
Thank you. And the final reason is the proposed development would result in the loss of all trees on the site, including several category A and B trees. Now, clearly, that is no longer technically accurate. What's helpful? Would that be helpful, Matt?
I think if that's the decision by members, obviously all the members, then yeah, we can amend that reason if members are still object to the loss of the number of trees as part of the current proposals, then we can amend the wording to reflect that as opposed to what I said previously.
Okay, is everybody clear? That's so okay. In that case, can I see everybody in favour of that revised reason number 5? Okay, those against and those abstaining. 3. Thank you. Right. Do we need to do anything else? Have we actually?
Through you, Chair, the last reason for refusal was
Oh, I beg your pardon. I was looking at 5 and we got 6, haven't we? Yep. Maths never was my strong suit. Right. Okay.
So through you, Chair, this is a sort of standard reason for most developments which require Section 106 agreement. So all that we would need to do is alter the figures in it to reflect the current scheme.
Okay, so can I see everybody in favour of that, subject to the amendments to the figures? Okay. Okay, any against? And abstentions? Thank you. We're there. Yes? Brilliant. Thank you. I'm now going to suggest that we have 10 minutes. We'll find out whether Councillor Morse is okay, and then we will come back and tackle the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Councillor Bialik's busy. Councillor Bialik. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 5, Planning Committee Report 211940 out, which is the David Lovell Heritage Development for, oh, hello, land. I think we've lost the screen. Which just about finishes off today, I think. Land adjacent to New Court Road. And when he's ready, it'll be Matt.
Thank you, Chair. So this next item is a planning application that's been submitted again in outline for the demolition of existing structures and construction of up to 30 residential units and associated infrastructure on land adjacent to New Court Road in Topsham. This is the location plan for the site, showing the site outlined in red. And this is the aerial view of the site, which is an agricultural field with understood to be was recently used for grazing, with existing housing along the west side of New Court Road opposite it, a former nursery to the north, the railway line adjoining the site to the east, and obviously members can also see in 5 motorway a short distance away to the west. So this slide, which I've added, shows the planning history context for New Court Road, and also the sites that are accessed off Cliss Road. So just to give you a quick update, this site shown in blue was granted permission at appeal in outline, and that is currently under construction for 155 dwellings. And then members will note from the appeals report as part of this evening's agenda, the outline planning permission was granted in October last year for an extension to this site for up to 100 dwellings here, outlined in dark pink. And then we've had 3 fairly small applications for housing granted further down New Court Road. So this one was a full application granted for 16 dwellings in November last year. And then these 2 sites here, which are currently just finishing off being built. This site is being developed for 27 houses, although an extra house has also been granted, so there's 28 houses on that site. And this site is almost finished being built for 7 houses, and a single house was also granted permission relatively recently further down New Court Road here. And then in the wider area, in terms of the area known as the Topsham Gap, these are also other developments that have been granted in the last few years. These ones that are shaded are basically being built, and these are currently under construction. This is the illustrative site layout that has been submitted for this application. It is only illustrative because this is an outline application with all matters reserved except for access. So members are just voting on the principle of development on this site this evening, as well as the detailed access proposals. This gives an indication of how a housing site might be delivered on the site for up to 30 houses. And this is the detailed access drawing, just showing standard vehicular access with footways adjoining it, with scope for a segregated footway running through the site that would be designed as part of the reserve matters when they are submitted. And now the rest of the presentation, I'm just showing you photos. So these are photos I took last week. So this is the view looking north along New Court Road. These are the two structures that would be demolished, which are effectively some ramshackle agricultural buildings, an existing hedgerow along New Court Road that would be retained as part of the scheme, and you can't actually see into the site over that hedgerow at the moment, or at least I couldn't. This is the view at the other end of the site looking back down New Court Road. And this is the existing access into the site, giving you a glimpse of the field that is proposed to be developed. And this is the view from the south looking towards the site across the adjoining land. And this photo shows a number of trees on the adjoining nursery site, effectively blocking views between this site and the edge of Exeter beyond it. This is the view looking down New Court Road from the existing site access. And as members will note from having read the report, the key issue in terms of the objections from local residents are concerns about access and highways and the traffic that will be generated by this proposal in terms of the extra impact it will have on the safety and functionality of New Court Road. And as can be seen from this photo here, it is a relatively narrow carriageway, and it is used by cyclists and pedestrians from nearby housing to walk into Topsham and for general recreational purposes. And it has no footways for certain sections. So this section looking down towards the site that was recently granted permission for 16 dwellings doesn't have any footways. This is actually a zoom in of the last photo, just giving members a sense of the nature of the road. So a vehicle coming with a pedestrian standing next to it with effectively this amount of space. See a cyclist in the foreground. And then just beyond the application that was granted in November last year, Yeoman Gardens for 16 dwellings, this is the site that has been recently almost finished, development of 27 dwellings, and a footway has been provided here as part of that scheme to provide a safer route for people to walk off the carriageway. And that continues to the adjoining housing site. Again, this is nearing completion, and a footway is proposed to the front here. As can be seen, it's not being constructed yet, and obviously my team will be getting on to developers about that to make sure that it is constructed. And just at the end of this photo, there is a pedestrian cycle link into the housing site where you can just see the houses over the hedge here. And that's the cycle link there. So from here, there is what would be classed a safe route, off the carriageway for pedestrians and cyclists to walk into Topsham, and that leads down to Exeter Road and the pedestrian cycle infrastructure along Topsham Road leading into Topsham. So this is the state of play for the rest of New Court Road beyond there. So there is an existing footway that leads down to the bend on New Court Road. And then this is the bend where the new house I mentioned earlier has just finished being built. And this is where there is an absence of footways again. And then just round the bend, this is the view down towards the junction of New Court Road and Denver Road. And again, this initial stretch of the road doesn't have footways. And this is just a little bit beyond, and then this is the junction. So members will have read the report, and officers are recommending approval of this application subject to Section 106 agreement and various conditions which have been added to the update sheet that members can obviously view. There have been a couple of late representations. One submitted on Sunday, another Monday, earlier this morning. First of those is from someone who's already objected to this this application, and they've requested the application is deferred due to concerns about the impact of the application on the safety and functionality of New Court Road, and they have referred to the transport assessment that was provided by the applicant, which, like the other applications along New Court Road, referred to a survey of the road that was carried out in 2018. And that survey was carried out before the recent housing sites mentioned were built, to give a baseline of how that road works in terms of the amount of traffic movements along it. And then the transport statement has effectively added the houses that have been granted permission since then, and added the impact of this application to form a view. However, this person has referred to a survey they carried out themselves very recently on the 14th of February, and has asked for the application to be deferred because they consider that the transport statement carried out by the applicant isn't accurate and up to date. Another objection has also referred to concerns about the number of cyclists using the road in terms of the safety of it, and has again also referred to the traffic survey that was carried out in 2018, so raising similar concerns. So those objections were sent to the applicant this morning, and also the local highway authority officer. And this afternoon we did receive comments back from the applicant and their transport consultant. And their view is that the information provided by the objector is flawed and not done professionally, and shouldn't be taken into account by this committee. Now, I won't go into all the detail of that, because it will obviously take up quite a bit of time this evening to read out. But I have sent it to the highway authority officer, and Ben is in agreement with the applicant over that particular issue. So officers are recommending approval. The main concern by locals is the impact on New Court Road in terms of the safety, and that's why we've got the photos up for you to consider. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Firstly, I'd like to make it clear that it's the applicant's transport advisor that has called it fraud. I'm quite sure it wasn't Devon County Council, and it definitely isn't this committee. So I just want to be clear about that. Okay, I'm going to take questions from Councillor Bialik, Councillor Moore, Councillor Aswashi.
Thank you, Chair. I'll wait for the other presentations. The strangest thing I've ever said at the planning committee, 10146, under the flood risk and service water management, the last paragraph. I need a little bit of help with explaining this. It says, in terms of foul sewerage, the applicant's report points out that it is highly unlikely that a connection is possible to the existing combined sewer along New Court Road. So the next option is to connect to the existing combined sewer located along Exeter Road via a sewer requisition. However, South West Water, in its response to the application, confirmed that it is able to provide foul sewerage services from the existing foul or combined sewer in the vicinity. So that tells me there's foul sewerage down New Court Road. We go back to the map. Ian knows what I'm on about. The point I'm making, and I'll ask the supporter a question. What I want to know is what's this got to do with it? The existing homes on the other side of the road. I do not believe that the majority of them, if any of them, are connected to any foul sewage. We've got water retention. Right. Well, that's not quite what the expression is. Water treatment plants now. So what I want to know is where is that? Where is that? Where is that main? Is that main going down that road? I know perhaps you may be able to advise me after the meeting or separately. It's where am I coming from? It'll come from when I ask the question of the developer.
I can't give you an accurate answer
Okay.
because I don't know. The impact of development on foul sewage isn't an issue that we normally take into account. So, yeah, all I can say is we've consulted South West Water, which is standard, as the foul sewage utility operator in this area, and they've said they've not objected. That's all I can say.
I'll leave it there because it's relevant to when the supporter comes up. Thank you, Chair.
Is it Councillor Johnson there, the hands up, or Councillor Newby? No, Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Matt, thank you for your presentation. I just wondered if you could point exactly to where the photographs that you showed with the pavements on it, at which sites they were, because I've been down that lane, but I'm not familiar with it since it's been built on. So where are the bits of pavement that are existing or are proposed, if you can, and the link into Topsham? Can you just point them out for?
Yeah, of course.
Me?
So at the moment, obviously the site is outlined in red. The stretch of New Court Road, it's 170 metres down to this site. No, it's not been built yet, but there'll be a footway constructed in front of that site when it's built, which will connect to the footway that we saw in the photos in front of this existing site, and then that will connect to the footway for this site in purple, and it's from there you've got the link down there to Exeter. Now, to be clear, just because there isn't a footway doesn't mean it's not safe. And our local highway authority have advised us that they are satisfied with the application and the fact that for certain stretches of New Court Road there will not be footways, and that's because it's effectively a one-way road, so it doesn't have a high volume of traffic movements along it compared to other roads.
You can ask us. I've got another question. So in here it says that the on site there's not going to be a play park, and that's going to be an contribution towards an off-site provision. Can you show me where the nearest play park is, please?
I don't. We've consulted the Public and Green Spaces team, and as far as I know, there isn't a play park in close proximity to this site. So that's why they've requested a contribution to effectively deliver one in the locality. So I can't tell you exactly where a play park is in Topsham, I'm afraid.
So can I just clarify then? So what this says here is they were going to build a new play park in the area, not that the money is going to go towards an existing one, which is what I understood from the report. So I'm just making sure I've understood it correctly.
Well, they've requested contributions to, as I understood it, to aim to deliver a new play area for this area where this housing growth has occurred and is occurring, because there effectively isn't one.
Councillor Ashburton.
Thank you, Chair. Could you put the photos of the unfinished pathway, please? Sorry. That's it. You said that you were going to chase up this bit here, which is going to be a footpath, and then a little bit further across there's parked cars, but it also looks like that's unfinished footpath. Can I just, is that going to be footpath? And in which case, where will the cars then park? Or am I going in the wrong direction looking at that? Thank you.
Well, I think it's highly likely that those cars are used by the construction people working on the site. Yeah, obviously, those houses have their own off-street parking, so there isn't likely to be any overspill parking, as is shown on that photo. So this is still a construction site at the moment. And yes, the plans do show a footway in front of this site, effectively where that rubble strip is shown. I'm not too sure why it hasn't been constructed yet. It wasn't my site, so I'm going to have to get onto the developer and find out what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. That everybody. In which, and Carol, did you have your hand up as well? So let Carol go first because she hasn't spoken yet tonight, and then you, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Matt, from the pictures there, is New Court Road a one way, or is it two way? Two way. Thank you.
It's two-way road, yeah.
Like in the hive mind, answering all the questions. Councillor Mitchell.
In the light of the amount of development that's taking place piecemeal along this road, at what stage do we as a planning authority get concerned about road safety and traffic issues on it? Because if we're just dealing with an isolation, it becomes a cumulative matter and dangerous.
Well, this is why we've written a report and we've consulted the Highway Authority. So the cumulative impact of the recent housing developments along New Court Road has been taken into account by the Highways Department of Devon County Council, and they're satisfied that the application is acceptable in Highways terms.
We do not have a highways officer. We don't have that expertise. We have to rely on the statutory consultee and their expertise. And I have no reason to believe that Ben is not good at the job that he does. I may not always agree with him, but I have no reason to believe he's not good at it. Pulling forward the objector to speak is Ben Fitzpatrick. As with earlier, you will have 3 minutes and I'll interrupt you when we get to that point.
Right, as we've heard, New Court Road is a narrow, single-track country-style lane with extremely restricted blind corners. Worse than this, no footways on the majority of it, including at the worst end, about half the width of this room. At the moment, it's much used by school children cycling to school, whether cycling into Exeter or into Topsham like my two small ones, by cycling commuters going to Exeter cycling, and by walkers across New Court and Exeter. However, the road is already dangerous and it's clogged at peak times. Children on scooters and in prams share the same few meters of tarmac with cars and vans and HGVs. Traffic is gridlocked, garden walls are hit repeatedly, and New Court Road, as we've heard, has increased in housing by more than 50% in the last 3 years, with more planned, with another 52 houses. The project's projected traffic numbers from the developers are realistic, so we have 8 movements in each peak hour out of 76 car parking spaces. So 76 cars, only 8 move, the rest are just for looking at the rest of the day. This 8 is added to data from the 2018 survey that we've already heard about, which was from a handful of intermittent hours, 3 in the morning and 3 after a very long lunch in the afternoon. This is before all the new developments were built. We talked about cumulative impacts. We do not know the cumulative impacts. We can only guess. This is not appropriate for assessing road safety. The totals from our surveys, whether flawed or not, are at least the more recent that we have. We think you can't rely on the 2018 data. You don't need to rely on our data if you don't want to. Commission an up-to-date survey, and then you can be sure that you're discharging your duties responsibly. So we think you must reassess, you must defer this, and you must ask for more evidence. We think we've shown that the road is already dangerous. It would be irresponsible and negligent to proceed now with the data just from the developer back in the ancient past. You risk vulnerable road users by doing this. you must defer and ask for more. If you're looking for other reasons to defer, well, development here destroys one of the last pieces of visual amenity, makes the road unsafe, goes against your own strategy. It crushes sustainable travel of all the cyclists up the road, it rips out ecology, it ruins the character of the area, and it piles more pressure on roads and schools and doctors, on top of the significant wave to come. If refused or deferred, a clear picture on housing targets will emerge. That may help you. Defer and ask for more evidence on road safety, please. If you can plan for a more sustainable, accurately measured approach that responds to these issues by making hard choices, then please do. But as this stands, you cannot responsibly approve it.
Thank you very much. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Needham.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hanford and Councillor Moore.
I've got two, if that's all right with you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fitzpatrick, good evening. Can I ask you these questions, please? Why do you feel that the road is unsafe and feel that this proposal will make it more so?
Yeah. So, like the photo shown by Matt earlier, cars off the road is often much more jammed with cars. So the parked cars, visibility is zero. Houses, maybe we could dial back a few photos to the near the end of the road, Matt. Open directly, keep going forwards in that direction. Keep going. So houses just before your photo, previous photo, open directly onto the road. When passing parked cars just before this, these houses on the right all open directly onto the road. This is the stretch that receives all the traffic. This is where the pedestrians have to go unless they want to walk 300 meters in the wrong direction, which people don't. You have young children being pushed down prams down this corner around extra parked cars that are usually here. These prams are pushed backwards by the force of traffic. Garden walls where the traffic cone is there because that garden wall is the one that's been hit repeatedly. If you can hit a wall, you can hit a person. And the only data you're looking at is from 2018, before we added 52 more houses.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I think you might have tweaked on a bit. Why do you think the evidence presented about road statistics is unrealistic?
Yeah, so we think the base survey in 2018 did not cover even a full relevant day. It was a damp day. It was before the houses were built. The extrapolations for the cumulative impacts, we think, are made based on extrapolating the existing population. The existing population is predominantly in the 80s. Who buys a new house in the 80s? So we need more data, we think. We think the peaks are different from No 3 Road, so taking a particular point in time is different. We have dog walkers. We think the manual for streets shared surface approximation that you may have been using is not appropriate here. And that's partly because that presupposes a kind of Italian plaza where you have lots of sight lines, there's lots of room. Down this road, there is no room. So you cannot walk past the car, you have to dive in behind into these parked cars. So we think it's not appropriate.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. I mean, I think you'll hear your concerns about the road and in regard to your own children, but the officer has shown us, I think, a few slides back that in your view there is a safe off-road access that is there. So firstly, your view on that one, please.
Yeah, so that is about 300, 400 meters back from here. So someone living in this house can't go right out their own front door and walk into Topsham. I guess we are recommending that they go 300 meters back in one direction, cut through and then walk 300 meters additionally. So for someone in their 80s who lives in that house with that traffic cone, by the way, called Jane, she would have to go all that extra distance just to go into Topsham and go to the shops.
So, sorry, Chair, there was the picture that you had up of the safe route, and that's the one you're...
Yeah. That's the one that's 300 meters back from here.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Chair, my second question is, and again, apologies if I've missed it, but what is the speed limit on this road?
It's 20.
It is 20. Okay, and is there much enforcement? Is there a local speed watch group?
There's no speed watch group. It's if I can be blunt, I suppose it goes against my own case. But in the worst bits, it's not. No one can do 20 because they're constantly stopping to get people through. so it's more of a problem further up actually, and you're near the site where people go for hell down the straight.
Thank you.
It sounds very familiar to where I live on the 20 mile an hour zone. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining the issues more. I just want to know that, so this is a 20 mile an hour road. Do you feel that if the road was had self-enforcing measures put in, that would that improve the situation? And my second question is, where's the nearest play park?
Yeah, so that's right. So, okay, so the first question, so as I understand it, traffic calming measures usually either constricts the road a little bit, which would add to the problem, or in the case of speed bumps, people kind of veer around it, which I think would also add to the problem. So perhaps here you could add something to stop people speeding down this bit, but I think the rest of the time it wouldn't help. As for the nearest play park, there's one near Newcourt train station, which is about 1 kilometre, and there is another one in Topsham recreational ground, which again that's over 1 kilometre. So it's a long way.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm next going to call. Yeah, you can go now. Sorry. David Lovell, who's speaking in favour. Again, you get 3 minutes. I think you've been here before and you know what you're doing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Your senior planning officer set out very clearly the planning reasons why this application should be approved. So I don't wish to repeat the same thing, but I would like to comment on a couple of matters. Firstly, the City Council has a clear aim to make Exeter a net zero carbon city, and you've adopted progressive policies to achieve that aim. The homes proposed by this application will support that goal. They will be built as net zero carbon homes, all of them. They will be amongst the greenest homes built anywhere around Exeter. As you know, Heritage are a local house building company with a track record for delivering high quality sustainable homes. But we do need a steady supply of building land in the city, with planning permission available in a timely manner in order to provide employment for more than 200 local tradespeople and their families. Approval of this application today will assist greatly to secure their continued employment. With regard to highways, a very last minute objection, as you heard, has been submitted at 7:30 p.m. last night with unsubstantiated and fundamentally inaccurate and misleading figures purporting to show traffic movements in Newcourt Road. The information has not been produced by a qualified traffic consultant. The figures do not add up, and they have not been shown correctly because they have counted pedestrians and cyclists as vehicle movements, which is completely incorrect and a blatant attempt to mislead in our view. We therefore ask that members disregard this late submission because it's misleading. It breaks all the rules for submitting representations correctly to this committee, and you might even say it's manipulative. After considering the objections to this site, your planning officer set out very clearly the planning reasons why this application should not be refused on highways grounds. There is good visibility along Newcourt Road. It's all relatively straight, and even after this development is built and taking account of all the recent planning permissions granted in Newcourt Road, the total vehicle movements and usage of the road will still fall well below both national and Devon County highway standards for both shared surface access roads and the use of Newcourt Road as a whole. After allowing for this development and all other existing planning permissions, traffic movements on Newcourt Road will still be less than half the maximum threshold set out in national guidance in Manual for Streets. Devon County Highways have already taken account of all the changes which have occurred recently and have confirmed categorically that they have no highway safety issues with this application. Nevertheless, in response to a request from the planning officer, we have added a pavement around the access to the site and along the entire frontage inside of the retained hedge in order to future-proof Newcourt Road for any further future developments so that it can be connected up to the footpaths which are being provided by the other developments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Branson.
Thank you. Could you update me and just tell me how many accidents, if any, have taken place in the last 5 years?
Well, your highways officer from Devon County Highways probably answer that more easily, but I'm not aware of any along New Court Road.
Yes, just to confirm, along New Court Road, within the last 5 years on our mapping systems, which would include all accidents, personal injury, collisions, there's been none along New Court Road itself within the last 5 years, which is what we have to go through as the highway authority when making that decision in terms of highway safety and what's happened along New Court Road.
I assume that's dependent on what's reported, essentially, isn't it?
Essentially, so yes, it needs to be reported, but up to the last quarter, which is obviously the 31st of December, there was 0 along New Court Road.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I welcome your commitment to building net zero homes. I've just got a couple of questions. You talked about the road being a shared surface road. You're talking about this road, so that's my first question. My second question is in your traffic report. It refers to the National Policy Planning document and says that the first priority is for pedestrians and cyclists for movement within the site and also in the neighbouring areas. So I'm wanting to know about, what consideration you have given to ensuring safety, of people moving along this road, particularly children, and so because there could be traffic calming along that road, to be blunt, because it's not designated as a shared road. It's a road. And why aren't you providing a play park on site? Because the homes will be available for mixed community, and there's little sort of dedicated green space or place for children to play where they can play on site without having to go with her being quite far away.
Thank you, Councillor Moore.
With regard to the road, I mean, obviously, Ben, your highways officer is probably better placed to answer some of those points than I am. But with the pavements that are being built outside the current developments that are under construction now, there is only a small section of road that won't have a pavement from those developments back to the development we're proposing. And that piece is quite wide and it's very straight. The road is in effect, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, designated as a shared surface access road. It performs that function. That's what it's designated as because it's for both pedestrians and vehicles. And the number of vehicle movements along the road after this is built and after taking account of all of the other developments that have already been granted consent and being built, the number of vehicle movements is literally half the threshold that national planning policy says is okay. So we are way under the numbers that would raise concerns with Devon County Highways, and we're deliberately putting a pavement along the front of the site so that the little stretch in between our site and the next site can be connected up in the future. So we're sort of future proofing, if you like, to make sure that that's taken care of. With regard to the play park, I have no objection to putting in play facilities on the site in the open space. That isn't a problem to us. We haven't been asked to do it, but we're not at the reserve matters stage yet. So when we come to that, if there's a request from the planning officers to include that, and that's what the authority wants, we have no problem with it.
You, Councillor Barwick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lovell. Just a strange thing is, I've gone on about foul sewerage again. And I like your commitment to net zero, so it won't be connected up with gas. That's excellent. But people still have a function, and that's what the foul sewers do.
I can answer your question if that's.
I'm talking about the other side of the road, and how are you engaging the people? Because I think that would, I won't say appease is the wrong word, that would certainly help the residents if you were to work with them and work with the council while they're through a condition, because this isn't the only place in Exeter where this happens, and because this is about updating facilities across the board for existing residents.
Yes.
I mean, would you be prepared to enter into discussions or a condition? I mean, I don't know what the cost is.
You're
or whatever.
referring to the foul drainage.
Correct.
I can answer that quite succinctly. Basically, the foul drainage in New Court Road comes so far along New Court Road that it stops before the other developments. The invert levels in drains are at quite a low level,
right?
And there's a dip in between this section of New Court Road and the foul drain. So it's very difficult to get any drains from this side past the dip in the road into the level of the drain the other side. The existing developments that are taking place now have managed it by pumping. So they've pumped the foul drain into the drain the other side of the dip. We don't have a problem with that because we have already got a drain which has been brought up into our development off Exeter Road. It's been brought along Exeter Road and into our existing developments under construction now. We have arranged with neighbouring landowners to bring that drain through the fields, and it will come along a short stretch of New Court Road, this side of the other developments, and it will provide a new foul drain which will be adopted in New Court Road, and therefore anybody who after that wishes to connect to it needs to simply contact South West Water and they'll be able to do so.
Yeah, yes, just that's it. I mean, I end up in this sort of stuff all the time, metaphorically speaking. But what I'm trying to say is, I think this is an important benefit to the community about getting houses up to the 20th century, let alone the 21st century. And I think if there was some support from you, if you were prepared to enter into discussions, because I don't know what the cost is, and nobody's looked at the viability, but certainly helping and supporting other residents in the area to connect up would be a major benefit. And if we could just have that commitment, I'm not asking you for money at this moment, to have that discussion, I believe it's an important environmental matter that should be considered.
We have no problem in trying to facilitate that. If it's a benefit to residents, it's no skin off our nose to help. But there definitely will be a foul drain that will be adopted and available for other residents to be able to connect their properties to. So no problem with that at all.
I have consulted, and we think it could be an advisory to the application rather than a condition.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I've heard what
Thank you. Councillor Newby, you're done. You're okay. Right, in which case I think we're done asking you questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. In that case, I'm going to open the debate. No one wants to speak, we'll just go to a vote. Thank you, Councillor Newby.
I'll go straight to Ben, because he knew I was coming for you. There's been 2 incidents of RTC, well, semi-RTC, lorry eating walls. Were they both reported?
They weren't on the mapping system. Show reported that the police wouldn't have attended, so therefore it's not on our mapping system. So we wouldn't take that into consideration as part of the planning process for us as a highway authority. Taking that into consideration unless it's been reported and recorded.
Yeah, you and I both know over years. I mean, I've cut people out of cars. You look after the cars. If it's not reported and it's just a quick handshake, see you later, thanks very much. It doesn't go reported, does it?
The likelihood is it wouldn't be reported, no.
So consequently, any minor scrape or bump wouldn't be put down on a piece of paper anywhere. So we'd have to take the residents' word as gospel that live there, that know what's been going on over the years.
Yes and no to that. I think obviously there is some element of local knowledge that's taken into account, but we also need to consider what's required as part of the planning process on what is relevant and what isn't relevant when we're considering as the highway authority the planning application and highway safety implications therefore.
One question.
Councillor Newby.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to have training for you specifically on what is debate and what is questions, because we're in debate now.
Debate behind it.
No, it's not. You've had your question time. This is the debate. I'm letting you off if it's very quick.
Okay.
Go on.
The traffic survey of 2018. Why are we still looking at that?
I would say the traffic survey for 2018 is perfectly applicable to this site. The transport assessment that was provided by the applicant has taken into account future developments. I, as the highway authority, I've looked at the transport assessments and I'm satisfied that the figures that have been provided are sufficient, that there are no highway safety implications. The 2018 survey recorded only certain hours during the day because we only need to look at the AM and PM peak. We don't consider the whole day. So therefore, that 2018 survey, from our point of view as a highway authority, is perfectly acceptable. There's no reason why we would question its validity as part of the planning application. We think it demonstrates with the further information that there are no highway safety issues.
Do you want to have a bit of debate? No? Okay. You'll save that for the questions on the next one, yeah? Okay, Councillor Bialik.
Right. Thank you. A couple of things here. I mean, this is outline application. The traffic matters, will we be resolving them now? And right, so we need to be very careful, okay? We don't want to fall into that trap of when it comes back reserve matters, that when we start talking about these things again, we say, oh, that all went through last time. Now, again, in its deja vu, not heard anybody complain about the principle of housing here yet, or we may in a moment. That's a good thing. So we haven't. So I'm thinking now is about the traffic now, as we have done in other parts. I think this is where, and I'm going to try and be nice, the county council steps up now and starts putting in a proper traffic management scheme. That may be prioritising priority lanes, you know, pass here, single lanes, and that's going to mean slowing people down single lanes. You could put in either a combined cycle, or I think you don't do that now with pedestrian lane down there, and it's just going to be single carriage, and you're going to have to prioritize it. It's not for me to find your solutions. These solutions are up there. Look through the book. You'll be able to find a solution to prioritize traffic one way and give in and lay. But you can do all of that in these narrows because you're proposing to do it somewhere else. They're proposing to do it somewhere else. So you can do it here to make it safe. And that's what we need to see in reserve matters coming back to assure people who are cycling and walking that they come before cars. And that's what you would be saying, a big indication. And that's what we're doing. And that's what you can do in that area. And I think the county has got to step up and put that in place. You've heard what they're proposing in with their up their end. But let's be honest and let's be fair to them. For temporarily, they can't be responsible for all the inactions of previous developments down that road. So the county has got to step up. So on that basis, about play parks, that can come back in reserve matters. So what we need, Chair, is that you've heard the open spaces team to actually look at what is the total provision required up in there. And we've got to deal with that. Not doing 2 swings in this development, 3 swings in that development. They've got to do it in a strategic way, which I would trust the play parks and open spaces team to do. And if we can get through that, I would, if I can get that principle coming back for reserve matters on how highways are going to deal with it, I would support the outline planning application.
And for clarity for me, because I think we've had a very unclear evening according to everyone else, are you asking that Devon County look at the road, not the developer? So it's not related to this application,
well,
essentially.
Well, then they've got to do it in it's a condition of this going through that we get that road sorted out. We cannot, I understand what you're saying there, but we cannot allow that situation to continue. They've got the solution.
For the whole situation. So,
the solution's there.
Ian, can we do that?
Yeah, so I mean, it is perfectly possible for this committee to recommend a condition that ties in the developer to institute further improvements. What the committee can't do, what the planning process can't do, is compel a third party through a condition or a Section 106 agreement to do that. So it's one that has to relate to the development first of all, and then in this case, yeah. So I don't think through this, should you be minded to grant planning permission, you could compel the county council to institute further improvements to New Court Road. I don't believe Simon's here. I don't believe he can. He's shaking his head.
Chair, just a bit of clarification. Mr. Fitzpatrick's whole contribution was totally, he wasted his time because that's what he was talking to us about, and we can't do nothing about it.
Councillor Bialik, you have been on this committee for far longer than me, and I'm already exhausted by the fact that if Devon County, as the Highways Authority, deems something to be safe, whether we agree with them or not, we do not have the expertise or knowledge to disagree. And as much as I like the idea of the rest of the road having some kind of traffic calming on it, I also agree that it's not entirely fair that Mr. Lovell deals with it all. He can deal with some of it. I'm sure that's a conversation we have. So I can't see the benefit of deferring the application to have that conversation because it doesn't relate to it. So we're in a bit of a pickle as far as your idea is. So I think essentially we're back to the application that was ahead of us. You're right. We might not agree with highways. I'm very sure Councillor Newby doesn't. We know Mr. Fitzpatrick doesn't, but Highways Authority have made their judgment based on the planning guidance and regulations, and that's what's before us. Councillor Hannaford, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I have some points and suggestions. I mean, I think I'm assuming that the leader of the council, Councillor Bialik, has moved the recommendation to approve.
I said I would be inclined to
Right.
support.
Okay. Well, I will move the recommendation to approve this particular application because I think we're doing covering two separate areas here. I think, and I am surprised to hear that with all the cumulative developments along New Court Road, that there isn't some sort of master plan or some sort of traffic management plan, because we all know the bigger context of this is the city's expanding and the Topsham Gap is being developed at pace. And in this area, I think we definitely need to have that in place. I think that's a matter that we should raise at Hattock. I can't remember if Councillor Newby is on Hattock, but he could certainly come along, or the Topsham members could come along and put that on the agenda, or even I could put it on the agenda without wishing to step on local toes. But nevertheless, there's a cumulative development along here, and I think it's right and proper that they should look at traffic calming, physical traffic calming, working with the local member on a speed watch group, and even sort of communications with local primary schools to do a walking bus, etc., to make sure that all the children, once all these houses are built, are safe and secure. But we have the application in front of us as it is. I think we've been assured by the developer in terms of his commitment to putting in pavement, which I think we've heard loud and clear, and the fact that those pavements, hopefully, when the other developers pull their finger out, actually get the pavements in, that they will link up, and there will be, hopefully, a pedestrian way across this area to make these developments safe for the pedestrians and particularly children who would be very vulnerable if in that circumstance, if we didn't have pavements. So in terms of the application itself, on page 143, we've got a clear engagement there with the council in terms of the affordable housing. The affordable housing is on site. This includes social housing. This is exactly what we need in terms of mixed development. All the issues we've talked about before, about making sure that the city's an affordable city for everybody, not that on low and fixed incomes have access to housing, and families who need it. So, and again, I will say this, Chair, it's refreshing that the affordable social housing is on site. It's not being sort of spirited away somewhere to be plonked on somebody else's land. There is a contribution, obviously, towards another 0.5 of a dwelling, but that will be in the mix. So I think it is good. It's a good mixed development. It's a balanced development. And on 149, again, the recommendation itself, I think, Chair, is very strong. The first one is about the affordable housing and 70% social rent. Then regards to the new play provision across the city, as the leader has said, or maybe not on site, but a strategic provision. I mean, I think it is important that we realise that it does need to be accessible, and not to expect parents and families to walk miles to get to somewhere, but nevertheless there's a contribution in there. And crucially in here again, there's contributions for health and NHS, which is clear in here. And also I think this is something that Councillor Sutton used to deal with a lot, which is the East Devon Pebblebed Heath. I think she used to get involved with that quite. Yes, she still does. So I would recommend this. Again, and it's echoing some of the points before, we have a housing shortage. We need more housing across the board. These are family homes, and there's a good provision of affordable and social housing. So therefore, I think we should back this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Did anybody else want to speak? Okay, in which case, oh, you did, Councillor.
As I said, the dilemma here is the housing is required. The applicant is responsible to come up with the answers to a variety of questions that people have posed. the issue is cumulative highway issues, which this is not the sole responsibility of this developer or future developers. And I just want to know, Madam Chair, Chair, sorry, I don't sound like it. Chair, whether we can be assured that the points made by Councillor Bialik in regard to the county reviewing road safety here urgently in the light of the developments and to come up with a long-term solution will be incorporated within the minutes of this meeting. Well, it's not something that we can add on as has already been said. I think we need to strongly reassure.
Quite happy for Howard to do that, but I also believe you read the assurance of a Devon County member and a member of Hattock that he will be bringing the item, I assume after having discussed it with your county councillor. Okay? In which case, do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bialik. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? I clearly wasn't counting. Thank you very much. And the final item on the agenda, I think we're going to, are you going to move up to that end of the room, Roger? Going to have a quick change of officer.
Introducing committee. I'm really sure his tea bag exploded.
Leon, are we done?
Okay, the final item on the agenda, well, not the final item, the final debate on the agenda is the Exeter Changing Rooms, Western Road, Exeter, and this one is for Roger to present.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application to demolish an existing building, provide a new sports pavilion, and to create an all-weather 3G pitch. So the site location plan, I appreciate it's a bit hard to see, so zoomed in a bit to the relevant parts. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the red line around the pavilion area, and the black bit you can see, the black outline is the footprint of the existing changing room facility. And then on the other side of the railway line to the east, the red line is around the proposed sports pitch, the 3G sports pitch, which is actually pretty much the same footprint as an existing grass pitch. I don't think this is a very helpful slide, I'm afraid, but this is an aerial view of the area, which we can come back to if we need to. Some photos. These are the first photos are of the existing sports facility changing rooms and car park. And some photos of the existing rugby pitch, which, as you can see, is enclosed at the moment by a series of low railings. So taking the pavilion first, these are two images here. The left-hand image is the existing arrangement, and the right-hand image, the proposed arrangement. So you can see that the replacement building will be pretty much exactly the same place as the existing one. So minimal change to location, and will be served by parking in the same location as the existing parking. It will be 2-storey with changing rooms and a gymnasium on the ground floor, and classrooms above, a staff room, a sports lab, and a viewing balcony which looks over the existing cricket pitch. Elevations. So it's a fairly simple building, similar materials to the existing building. And some illustrative images. Turning to the pitch, so you can see left-hand side is the existing arrangement, the right-hand side is the proposed arrangement. So pretty much exactly the same, but the key difference is that the new pitch will be an artificial pitch surrounded by 3-metre fence with floodlighting, unlike the existing pitch, which is a grass and just surrounded by a railing. So obviously it will enable it to be used at a wider time of day and a greater part of the year than the existing pitch. So the fencing around it. So the key issues here are the principle of the use, the sports pitch provision, flooding, landscape and ecology, noise, and sustainability. All these issues are dealt with in the report, so I won't go into more detail now, but happy to answer questions. And the recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions as set out in the report, with a couple of small changes. Proposed to change the wording to condition 8 to refer to work that's already been done on the sustainable development of the building. And condition 14 currently recommends start time in the morning 9 o'clock, which is inconsistent with permissions we've already granted for other pitches in the area. So it's proposed to change that to 8:30 in the morning. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have any questions for Roger? Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Just I've got 3 questions. So the first question is the proposal is to put a fence around the pitch, and the areas in the Valley Park master plan. Is that compatible with being in that designated area? My second question is 20 cycles sufficient for a sports facility, which would hope encourage active travel?
Sorry, can you repeat that second question?
Is 20 cycle routes sufficient? And the third one is, and there's quite a lot of information I was pleased to see about the pitch, the 3G pitch, and is that less ecologically damaging than a rubber crumb pitch? I wasn't quite clear. And can you just comment on the environmental impact of the 3G pitch? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. In respect to the Valley Park, there are no specific policies that would prevent a high fence in the Valley Park, but the Valley Park provides a range of uses, if you like, or benefits to the community, including formal and informal recreation. There needs to be a balance between the two, and we thought long and hard about this. We know it's an issue. Creating a 3-metre high fenced-off area could be argued to change the character of the Valley Park, but in the context of this very large Valley Park, we think it's an appropriate use and appropriate design and development, which, given that it's a very small percentage of land in the context of the whole Valley Park, and provides for the formal element of recreation which Valley Parks provide. So we think that's acceptable. In terms of cycles, yes, that the number of cycle parking spaces provided would meet the standard identified in the SPD on sustainable transport, so that is acceptable. And the rubber crumb pitch, there's been some very detailed work that the applicant has done in response to questions on this about the sustainability of it, and there's a lot of detail submitted to support the application which shows that it's as sustainable as it can be, and where, for example, it will be designed in such a way that it can't be leak into local watercourses, etc.
There is some emerging technology which will become even more sustainable, I understand, using cork, but I don't think that is available yet. But it may be over time this could be replenished in that way.
So that was, I saw that about cork, which I thought was quite interesting. Would it be possible to have a condition added to this that any future replacement couldn't be less sustainable than the previous installation, so that it only progressed in a more sustainable direction?
We could look at it. It might be difficult to monitor something like that.
Would they need to come back to the planning commission?
If they needed planning permission, then yes, we could ask them to do a whole sustainable assessment of it at that time. I think if you're simply replacing the surface, probably wouldn't need planning permission as a replacement.
Can I propose that we add that as a condition?
You might want to answer the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
of course.
they're speaking
Yeah,
in a minute.
that's a good idea. Sorry.
There we go. That's a thought. Councillor Newby.
Thank you, Chair. Light pollution. Can we control? We can control that, can't we? Light pollution with timers and
yes, I mean
which is facing to it, from it, around it.
Officers have raised this with the applicants who provided very, very detailed analysis by specialist designers to ensure that when the lights are on, they don't spill unnecessarily outside of the area of the pitch, and also there will be timers on the lights so they can't be on when the pitch isn't in use or even left on accidentally, and that will be a condition of the planning commission.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lights, then Councillor Hannaford.
It's just a clarification really around the flood mitigation measures. I know there were concerns and then they said that they will be addressed. Is that purely to do with drainage? Is that and we know that can be remedied going forward, or is it more complicated than that?
It's a bit more complicated than that because there was concern about the relationship of the building as it was originally proposed for the changing rooms to flood prevention measures that had already been implemented around the site, and the siting of the building has been revised to essentially put on the same site as the existing building, so it doesn't interfere with the drainage arrangements that had been previously put in place.
And Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. Just in regard to some concerns about light pollution, I don't think it would be a problem down there because it's not really near anywhere, and particularly in the context of some of the light pollution from St David's railway station a bit further along. But I also actually think, as my other expert colleagues will know, actually some more lighting down there would actually be very beneficial because the existing building has been often the subject of antisocial behaviour, things like drug dealing and other areas, issues that were going on down there. And also you could argue the lighting would mean it could be safer for walkers and people who are walking dogs and cycling home after the shift. So I actually think that the lighting, not only from the people that are playing the sports, but from the community, the lighting is a big plus.
Good question. Good question.
Would you agree, Chair? I'm sure you would.
In that case, could I please have Steve Strang speaking in support? You have 3 minutes, and we will interrupt you if you're still going at that time.
Just in case I run out of time later, I'd like to start by thanking you all for the opportunity to speak to you today. As many of you will know, Exeter College has in the last few weeks been rated as outstanding by Ofsted. Inspectors praised our strong links with partners across the city. We're incredibly grateful for the support we receive from our friends and partners and proud of the support that we offer them. An example of this is the Exeter Community Sports Hub, which provides facilities for football, tennis, both for the college and for local clubs, and which is noted as an example of good practice in the new playing pitch strategy. These new proposals will benefit hundreds of members, young and perhaps maybe like me, not so young, of sports clubs and organisations, for example, Exeter Cricket Club, the Exeter Saracens and Exeter Athletic Rugby Clubs. The existing floodbox changing rooms are at the end of their useful life, and this is an opportunity to not just replace them, but also to improve them for the college, the community and the city with a new gym, as well as changing rooms and other facilities. At the same time, the all-weather 3J rugby pitch will enhance existing facilities on site, close to both the new pavilion and the existing Exeter Sports Hub. Like the existing hub, use will be shared by the college and community sports club, and will be overseen by the Sports Hub Advisory Board, which I chair. The updated application responds very carefully to the feedback we received on earlier proposals from officers, from the Environment Agency, from Sport England, and from the Rugby Football Union, and from our neighbours. The updated, in particular, the footprint of the pavilion has been reduced and moved away from the flood defence scheme. The CG pitch now covers an existing rugby pitch instead of playing fields to the south, so existing cycle and walking routes are maintained. The playing pitch strategy says that a lack of new facilities is stopping local rugby clubs developing more teams, particularly for women and girls. Our plans are supported by, amongst others, Exeter Saracens Junior and Girls Section, Exeter Athletic Rugby, and Topsham Rugby Football Club. Exeter City Community Trust, who are also members of our Sports Hub Advisory Board, say the proposals will help to meet a real need for high quality facilities, whilst also extending opportunities and lasting benefits to a broader range of people across the community. It's only been because we are an outstanding college that we're able to secure central government funding to support and to help meet the growing needs for new facilities in the city. We and our partners would welcome your support today too. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? We've got Councillor Barlick, then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Strang. Thank you for that. You've mentioned a bit about the Sports Hub advisory. I know all about it. But I think the committee would benefit from understanding just how you engage the community and the involvement of the clubs and the people in using that down there. If you could explain that and the benefits that you or people see of the community engagement, which is very important.
Certainly. So Exeter Sports Hub Advisory Board came into existence when we took on the what used to be the old Civil Service Club, which is the Exeter Sports Hub now called. It consists of ourselves as college, our partner clubs, the football clubs, the cricket club, the tennis club. They all have membership of that alongside Exeter City Community Trust. And it's a bit of a collaborative sort of approach to make sure that we share access across the facilities. So, okay, as a college, we use them Monday to Friday, kind of 9 to 5 type sort of timings. But in the evenings and weekends, those facilities are available for other clubs. And we seek to kind of enhance and improve those facilities alongside those clubs and alongside the other partners we have. And that membership, the advisory board, can ensures that one voice doesn't dominate the whole sort of scene down there, and that we share the use across the facilities and that others benefit from it, whether it's Man versus Fat, the Young People's Tennis Club, the after school clubs, holiday clubs through City Community Trust. We partner with them to help the City Community Trust to help us run the facilities out of ours. So we make sure that a real broad spectrum of people can access those facilities. If they bring up sort of concerns and voice them at that sort of committee, then we all play a part in helping solve those little problems and niggles, whether it's around timings, making sure the lights stay on or don't stay on, as the case may be, making sure all of that is sort of taken care of. But the maintenance and upkeep, etc., of the pitch and the facilities down there is on us as a college. So we're not looking at our partners in terms of that. They're there in terms of membership and making use of the facilities and working us to open them up as far as we can across the community. We maintain responsibility for that.
Thank you. That's all right, don't worry. It's just getting late, so I'm not going to just interrupt. Councillor Moore.
Hello. Got a clue to my questions. So I've got 2 questions. First of all, the proposal is to put in 10 Sheffield hoops to accommodate 20 bicycle spaces, and I really welcome the fact it's under a covered shelter because there's nothing worse than getting out on a wet bike. But I do feel that 10 hoops is a minimal provision for a sports facility which is located on a very cyclable route, and you're working with, involving people who will inevitably cycle on all sorts of bikes, regular bikes and peculiar bikes as well. So, I'm just wondering, do you really feel that that is sufficient, and could that be improved? And secondly, the question about the pitch. So I read all the information that you put in about the 3G, and I'm really pleased that obviously you recognise the environmental impacts rubber crumb and all the rest of it. So that's that's really to be welcomed. So in terms of I don't know how long these things last for. Would you be prepared to consider some sort of condition which required an equivalent or more environmentally sustainable pitch in future years when it's replaced? Thank you.
Right, so I'll take the easy one first. Cycle hoops, then yeah, absolutely. Happy to look at increasing the cycle provision down there. So no problem with that. In terms of pitch and rubber crumb infill, whatever you call it, we've eliminated rubber crumb completely because the concerns are out, pollutants, microplastics, etc. Gone completely. This system that we're proposing is the best that's available now in terms of sustainability, from the infill material to the carpet material to the base that goes in on it itself. And I think they call that kind of cradle to cradle sort of product, so that when it's past its life expectancy, which if we maintain it properly, which we've demonstrated we do with the other Exeter 3G facility for football, should last somewhere around sort of 20-25 years. So we would build in replacement into those replacement costs into our sort of budgeting and proposals. I lead on sustainability for the college, so it is sort of one of the areas that I would be looking at in terms of improvement for the future as well. It fits naturally with what we're about as a college and what we try and achieve through that sort of replacement and improvement programme. Conscious that I talked too much the last time.
All right, thank you. Councillor Newby's actually going to ask a question when you're meant to ask a question. So, Councillor Newby.
Off the top of your head, how many youngsters or age groups do you reckon use the facilities now, roughly?
Try and switch that on. Age groups, it ranges from everything from sort of 3-4 year olds right through to sort of people who are trying to get fitter right now and increase mobility, etc. So we're through to 50s, 60s. So we've got a right broad spectrum. A lot of that comes through our links with the City Community Trust and the groups that use the sort of facilities down there, so we can tap into them not only to help us run the facility out of hours, but also to encourage those different groups to access the facilities. So there's a broad range, and it's used, for example, at the moment, our Exwick Sports Hub is used at the moment all the way through the sort of that 8:30 start time all the way through to 10 p.m. Most of it 7 days a week.
Thank you very much for your time. Right, have you got any questions you want to ask
before I open the debate? Right. Let's open the debate. I had Councillor Sutton whispering before, and then Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conscious that it's late and it's been a long meeting. I do welcome this application. I mean, like about 20% of the committee is an area that I know incredibly well. And I have to say that the work around the Exeter hub and the facilities that are already down there, that the college has worked in partnership with the city have been a major positive contribution to the area for all kinds of reasons, some of which Mr. Strang referred to. And the other thing that I really want to welcome is the comments and the responses to the perfectly reasonable comments in the objections around artificial pitch, the artificial pitch. And I think actually it speaks volumes of the positivity of the relationship between the City Council and the college, in that these have been completely addressed. It isn't just about where the pitch is. The original application, the pitch has been moved, and in response to Councillor Moore's comments as well, I think you've certainly reassured me about the college's commitment to actually doing the best for your students, both now and future, and for the community. So I think this is to be really warmly welcome, and I will be delighted to support this application. And you know, it always seems to be the case. I mean, we've given the college a bit of a drubbing on several occasions with their applications, but you've always kind of come back with you've kind of taken it on the chin, had a look at it, come back, made the revisions, and I've no reason to doubt that you're as good as your word in terms of the sustainability. And as I say, if things are to be changed, they will be made better and not worse. Thank you.
Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm taking from that Councillor Sutton has moved the recommendation, and I'm happy to second that. Of course, I mean, I think again, we all remember, or some of us remember, the old Civil Service Club, and I happened at one point to be the portfolio holder for Place and was involved in some of the original negotiations where it was transferring over. And I think there was great controversy that we were losing the social club and what was it going to turn out with, and we've ended up with a first-class sports hub and now this new investment for these new first-class sports facilities. And I think this is we're very lucky in Exeter, I think, to have the college there with the sports hub, with all the activities, particularly for young people that they're providing, and this will enhance that. Now there has been quite a bit of debate, I think, on some of our local social media sites, and I think that the three issues are inevitably has been parking, but that's more in relation to the existing hub, and we are in consultation, city and county members about that, but that doesn't actually relate to this site. That's not part of that debate. It's more the Valley Road, Exwick Road sort of end. In relation to the artificial pitch, I think again we all take that seriously, but the offer on the table now is improved. It was a concern, and it was quite a vocal concern, but it's been addressed. And the third, Chair, is in regard to access, public access in dog walking. And to be fair, I understand the concerns locally, and I'm sure my colleagues do, but in fairness, there is a huge amount of open space around that area. You can still have a really good first-class walk. You can walk the dogs. You can get around the area. We're not blocking off any walkways, any cycleways. This is simply making this site safe and secure for the purpose that it was designed for. So I think really in conclusion, Chair, I think it's page 165. I think it is 165. Maybe I've lost my place on it. Sorry, Chair. Here we are. In regard to the amount of local people that are using it and need it, 450 people, and for some time now, in terms of the capacity for younger people and across the board, but there has been a particular issue in West Ex and around this site about the suitability of the facilities for women, as has been alluded to in the presentation. I mean, I can remember when we were giving grants to help support women's rugby in the area, the most horrendous sort of things that in a pub, the women would have to, one team would have to use the ladies to get changed in a local pub, and they'd have to requisition the gents with the opposition team or vice versa, because there simply wasn't the capacity for them to get changed and get ready for the game. That's not an acceptable way forward, and this investment will help improve that and do everything they want for the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. I'm going to Councillor Moore and then Councillor Bialik.
Thank you. I do have concerns about the fence and enclosing an area of Valley Park. So I think it's important that this isn't seen as a precedent, and it should be considered in its own merits. And I do feel that the community and health and well-being benefits outweigh that. So so therefore I'm prepared to live with that sort of not sure feeling. I welcome the feedback around the quality of the pitch, and I would ask, can we have a condition to say that it can be no less environmentally sustainable or improve it? And the cycle, just as we've got greater commitment, and we had a commitment from the applicant to say that yes, they will look at increasing the number, because 10 stands for 20 bikes will soon fill up if you've got two teams playing rugby or whatever. It's just not going to be sufficient, and so let's just head that one off now, because we know that people will cycle there because it's well connected with cycle and pathways along there, and we'd want to encourage as many people as possible to cycle there.
I think the condition for the cycle parks is an easy one, because we've got that agreement, so we can add a condition about that, which I'd be quite happy for. There are rules on conditions, and they have to be reasonable and they have to be precise. And your current condition probably would be deemed not precise. So we'd have to look at the wording of that. I'm not entirely sure if it'd be deemed reasonable though, so I'm going to ask Roger to come in on that.
You know, less environmentally sustainable. I'll let these two argue that out.
Well, I've just had a conference with Simon about this, and his advice, which has helpfully reminded me, is that for a condition to be used, you need to ask yourself whether you would approve it without that condition. The condition needs to be necessary to make the development approvable, and I think we would recommend approval for this without that condition. So it's my recommendation that it's not really an appropriate condition.
I kind of agree, because the legal advice has been given it to us, and I'm not going to argue with the legal advice on this, and with the planner as well. Although I'm happy to put it to you as a committee. If you want to disagree with that advice, you're welcome to, but I don't think we should really be doing it. So could I see all those who'd be in favour of the condition that would be worded slightly better relating to the pitches moving forward? All those in favour of that? All those against? Oh, sorry, I've got a vote. Any abstentions? Councillor Hannaford?
Point of query or whatever you want to take it as, Chair. You're wording about where those of us who are against aren't in favour of upgrading the pitch. I think those of us perhaps are who went that way think that by the time of the 10-year period is lapsed, the technology will have gone on, and we have confidence that Exeter College will want to be a leader in terms of in these matters.
It will be 20 to 25 years' time. I don't think I'll be sitting on this committee then. I hope not. I might not after today, to be honest. But I think we have to take the word of the council as in not the council, the college, that, and I have no reason to believe they wouldn't do the best for the environment moving forward, because they currently are doing the best they can. So I'm happy for there to be a redrafting that I'll approve of the. Yeah, I'm going to let you talk in a minute, Councillor Bialik. Right, for that, for the amount of cycle paths, parking. Now, Councillor Bialik, would you like to come into the debate?
Okay, well, first of all, I can remember Flower Pot before all the buildings was down there, and it was Flower Pot playing fields. And the clue here is in what it's called, Exeter playing fields, okay? And that's what it is, as far as I'm concerned. To anybody who lives or associates around the edge, it's Exeter playing fields. The clue's in the title, okay? Now, we've got to appreciate the investment that the college has been making in that place down there, New Cricket Square, what they've done with the old civil service club and everything else. Massive improvements have been made, allowing the community to be actively involved in participating. That's happened all the time. I believe that is an example on what's going on. And I think, to be quite honest, having the lights on, it will have some impact. I can tell you that now, it will. But is it going to be detrimental? I don't believe so. Is it actually going to improve antisocial behaviour around there? Well, not improve it, actually diminish it. Is it going to diminish antisocial behaviour? Well, the county lines are left to move on. That's what they're left to do, because that's what goes on down there. And I think having lights, high traffic of people in and out, actually improves an area. Going under that bridge on your bike, or if you're walking late at night, is totally not very good at all and antisocial, and it's got to stop and it's got to change. This is going to be a massive improvement for the people in and around that area, and it's also bringing good sport. And just on the final thing about rubber crumb, I've got plenty of it, Mr. Strang, in my boots at home. I'm glad you're improving it, but do you know what? I trust the college. We cannot micromanage everything. And that's what we're trying to do in this committee, micromanage everything. For goodness sake, let's see what it is. Good. It's very good indeed. It may not be perfect. Well, we're going to have to give up on that one. This is very good. And I think we should support this one. A lot of the fears, Chair, has been taken away. And the initial stuff, it was about change. It was about change, and I got a lot of those emails, And actually, this is a demonstration of the college working with people to improve the environment in the facility. It's going to be a good facility for people in Exeter and the local community. Thank you.
Thank you. I wouldn't say it was necessarily perfect, but it's the closest we've come with these 3 applications tonight, I would say.
Yeah.
Right, in which case I'm going to move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much, everybody. Right, the last 2 items on the agenda before you get excited. You've got an appeals list of decisions made and withdrawn. Has anyone notified anything to you, Roger or Ian?
I've
or
not
Matt?
notified any questions.
Okay. Done that. And the appeals report, which is worth reading and relates to land within the Topsham Gap, where we've lost an appeal. Don't think anybody's any questions or anything's been notified to you. In which case, we have a site inspection party on the 14th of March at 9:30. All members of the committee have been invited, and it relates to the Newbury Breakers Yard in Redhill. Thank you very much for making it through with me, even if I didn't, nearly. Good night.